Chapter 1801. Lin Sun had escaped. No one had expected that Lin Sun still had a chance to escape in such a situation, which was unacceptable. Damn it! Tao Jianxing's face contorted, and his eyes turned red. With their pride and dignity, it was embarrassing for them to join forces to deal with Lin Sun alone. If word got out, it would affect their reputation. Now, even if they joined forces, they still couldn't take Lin Sun down. It was a great humiliation. The others' faces were ugly as well. In this battle, Lin Sun seemed to have escaped, but in fact, he was the biggest winner. First, he obtained a treasure refining Dao Qi that had evolved into a great Dao chapter. Then, he killed Lu Ong, a pure-blooded descendant of the Bloodscale Battle clan. If it wasn't for the mysterious and terrifying Sha Liuqing's intervention at the critical moment, the previous siege would have almost been reversed by him. If we let such a ruthless person escape, he'll definitely become a huge threat in the future. Someone sighed, feeling suffocated. If it was a ruthless person on the starry ancient path, they might be fearful and apprehensive when fighting and killing. However, Lin Sun was not one of them. Yin Chunjun of the Universe Dao Court, Lu Ong of the Bloodscale Battle clan. Each of them had an extremely terrifying background and origin. Who would dare to offend them on the starry ancient path? However, they were all killed by Lin Sun. This was enough to make anyone tremble and fearful. Do you think he can walk out of Kunlun ruins alive? After saying that, Sha Liuqing's figure turned into wisps of obscure mist and disappeared from the scene. Many people were stunned, but they immediately reacted. Indeed, the power Lin Sun displayed might be enough to make anyone afraid. But at the same time, he had already been targeted by countless powerhouses. Some people wanted to snatch treasures, while others wanted revenge. In this dangerous Kunlun ruins, it would be difficult for Lin Sun to survive. Wen Qingxue remained silent for a moment before turning around and leaving. Her figure was ethereal and her appearance was like a fairy. She seemed very calm from beginning to end, but deep down, she knew that she had completely become enemies with Lin Sun. However, she did not care too much. Lin Sun had a trump card, but so did she. Gradually, many powerhouses left one after another. He actually escaped. Ji Qian felt a sense of loss. As long as we're in the Kunlun ruins, there'll be plenty of opportunities in the future. At the side, the elegant and handsome Meng Yi smiled with a calm expression. I'm even more curious. The successor of the divine mirror ancient sect, who hasn't appeared for a long time, has actually appeared in the Kunlun ruins and has his eyes on Lin Sun, divine illumination ancient sect. Ji Qian and Jiang Heng were both shocked. The 6 Dao courts and the 10 war clans were naturally the ones that attracted the most attention on the starry ancient path. But in the darkness that the world couldn't see, there were some extremely terrifying and mysterious forces. The divine illuminating ancient sect was one of them. This was an ancient power that moved in the darkness, and it was an organization of assassins that could strike terror in the hearts of countless cultivators. Perhaps very few people knew the name of the divine illuminating ancient sect, but as long as the name of the oracle apostle was mentioned, everyone would know. Those who were ordered by the gods to kill were known as the oracle apostles. In the archaic era, 100,000 years ago, the name of the oracle apostle could be said to have shaken the starry skies, intimidated the heavens, and was extremely terrifying. No matter who was targeted by them, no matter what identity or cultivation level, no one could escape their assassination. It was rumored that there was once an oracle apostle who killed a real emperor realm existence. These mysterious and terrifying oracle apostles came from the divine, illuminating ancient sect in the dark world. Didn't they say that the divine, illuminating ancient sect was destroyed after the end of the Battle of Emperors? Jiang Heng couldn't help asking. That's just a rumor. A mysterious force like the divine, illuminating ancient sect that is distributed in the dark is like the dark side of the light. It's impossible to eradicate it so easily. Meng Yi's eyes were clear as he spoke slowly. He came from the Qiongqi war clan and had read many ancient books and learned many secrets about the divine illuminating ancient sect and the Oracle Apostles. This sect was known as one of the three giants in the dark world of the starry sky. In this sect, there was a divine punishment list, and the names listed on it were all targets that this sect must kill. Meng Yi was very curious about whether Lin Sun's name had also been listed on the divine punishment list. So, that guy with strange movements just now is an oracle emissary? Ji Qian asked in surprise. He came from the Ji clan, an imperial family, and of course he was well aware of the terror of the Oracle Apostles. It must be so, Meng Yi thought for a moment and said. However, no matter how powerful the Oracle emissaries are, they wouldn't take the initiative to provoke the 6 major Dao courts or the 10 war clans. Obviously, Lin Sun isn't one of them. Jiang Heng couldn't help asking, how could a guy from the ancient desolation realm offend the divine, illuminating ancient sect? Meng Yi said, the Oracle Apostles kill people on the orders of the gods. They never care about the reason. As for who issued the orders, I'm afraid even Lin Sun doesn't know. This was normal. In the past, many strong men who were assassinated by the Oracle Apostles didn't even know why they were targeted. No matter who kills Lin Sun, I don't care. But I must get the flying immortal token in his hand. Meng Yi said calmly. His words were full of determination. On this day, the news about Lin Sun's battle with a group of heroes spread like wildfire in the treasure refining place. For a time, it caused a great uproar. Not long ago, when Lin Sun killed Yin Chunjun, he caused a great disturbance. Now, even Luong died in his hands. This was undoubtedly too shocking. The most incredible thing was that even a group of peerless great sages on the Starry Sky Great Sage list couldn't kill Lin Sun. Instead, Lin Sun escaped. Was a ruthless man. That was it. At the same time, some news about the divine, illuminating ancient sect and the Oracle Apostles began to spread. Shao Yoqing's appearance began to make many strong men fearful and vigilant. Some people gloated, thinking that Lin Sun was targeted by the Oracle Apostles and would definitely die. At this time, Lin Sun and Ahu were hiding in the depths of a deep cave. Whoosh, Lin Sun swallowed the divine medicine and meditated while saying, Ahu, thank you so much this time. We're in the same group, so we should go in and out together. Ahu said and stood up. He stood up. Just relax and rest. I'll stand guard for you. Lin Sun nodded. Although he finally escaped from the battle, he also consumed a lot of energy and his physical strength was on the verge of exhaustion. The cultivation of the early stage of the Great Saint realm is still not enough. After this battle, Lin Sun thoroughly realized that he must improve his combat power as soon as possible. In the case of one-on-one, he would certainly not be afraid of anyone, but when it came to one against many, it was obvious that he began to struggle. If he couldn't break through, he might not be able to suppress all his opponents the next time he encountered such a siege. I can be invincible in the true Saint realm, and the same goes for the Great Saint realm. Lin Sun took a deep breath and began to concentrate on cultivation. His whole body was flowing with Taoist light, and he looked solemn. Not far away, Ahu stared at Lin Sun silently. He knew that after this battle, Lin Sun also felt suffocated. However, this was also a good thing. The real strong never feared that the enemy was too strong, but that there was no opponent. Ahu was very sure that after this battle, Lin Sun was destined to become stronger in the future with a strong foundation that was not inferior to any peers in the world. 2 days later, Lin Sun woke up from meditation. He sensed silently and found that his cultivation had obviously improved a lot, but there was still a big gap to enter the middle stage of the Great Saint realm. I have roughly speculated that Sha Luqing should have mastered an extremely mysterious body movement, so that he can ignore all defenses and move in the void at will. Seeing Lin Sun wake up, Ahu immediately said, she had been thinking about this problem in the past 2 days. The most important thing is that his body movement can avoid all perception and locking of spiritual awareness, so that he will appear erratic and unpredictable. Lin Sun nodded. He carefully recalled the details of the battle at that time and said, yes, his strength may not be the strongest, but his body movement is the most mysterious and erratic. Ahu's beautiful eyes glowed with wisdom, Such a body movement must involve the wonderful use of the Great Way of Space, which also means that Sha Liuqing's control of the Great Way of Space has obviously reached an extremely terrible level. After a pause, she looked at Lin Sun. If you want to deal with him, there are two ways. One is to improve your cultivation, and the other is to further improve the power of the Great Way of Space. Lin Sun agreed. He was also thinking about this problem and had decided to take action. The power of the Great Way in the Kunlun ruins is incomparably strong and solid. It can also make it easier for cultivators to comprehend the profundities of the Great Way of Space, Lin Sun said. Currently, I've only comprehended a little bit of the Great Way of Space, and there's still a long way to go before I reach the next level. I plan to focus on improving my cultivation. Ahu smiled and said, "Do you still remember the immortal peach tree I mentioned? If you can pluck an immortal peach, it'll be enough to withstand 100 years of hard cultivation." Lin Sun's eyes lit up. Ahu said, "In 2 days, the treasure refining ground will fall into a silent and sealed state. At that time, we'll leave in advance and enter the depths of the Kunlun ruins to look for this immortal peach tree first." Lin Sun nodded in agreement. The treasure refining ground was only the periphery of the Kunlun ruins. The real, supreme fortune and opportunities were distributed in the depths of the Kunlun ruins. Ahu thought of something, and her beautiful eyes were filled with a trace of anticipation. "Brother Lin, take advantage of this time to see how magical that Great Way chapter is." Lin Sun was stunned, and then he immediately understood and agreed happily. Buzz, with a wave of his sleeve, a strand of treasure-refining Dao Qi emerged and transformed into a Great Way chapter. It emitted a sacred and immortal aura, and it lit up the dark cave. Vaguely, there were strands of Dao sound that sounded like the sounds of nature resounding, and it was extremely magical. There was no doubt that this treasure-refining Dao Qi was too extraordinary. At the same time, Lin Sun took out the broken blade. Chapter 1802. Whoosh! The broken blade was like a hungry wolf. As soon as it appeared, it rushed into the treasure-refining Taoist Qi. Its snow-white surface emitted amazing, obscure fluctuations, and it was singing happily. It was visible to the naked eye that the treasure-refining Taoist Qi was being refined little by little. And on the surface of the broken blade, there was an amazing change. Life-precious patterns that resembled golden dragons appeared one after another, swimming about within the broken blade with their heads held high. They were extremely lifelike. Both Lin Sun and Hu were stunned. The speed of transformation was too conspicuous. Originally, the broken blade had 8 life-bonded tattoos, but in just a few breaths, there were 6 more. Moreover, the transformation was still going on. The clear howls of the broken blade grew more and more excited, and the obscure aura it emanated grew denser and denser. If one looked carefully, the 3 Dao marking diagrams that had transformed into the origin, extreme, and execution inheritances seemed to have come to life from their deathly silence, and they emitted a mysterious aura. At this moment, the dim cave was already glowing brilliantly, and it was filled with the divine glow of treasures. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, who wouldn't have believed that the transformation of a treasure could show such a mysterious phenomenon? What was the origin of this treasure? Who became more and more curious? At the same time, Lin Sun couldn't calm down either. The broken blade had long been his life-bonded holy weapon. At this moment, every transformation of the broken blade appeared in his heart, which surprised, and even shocked him. 20, 30, 40, 50. For a full 10 minutes, the broken blade had been transforming, like a bamboo growing crazily in the spring rain, rising steadily. With the transformation of the broken blade, the treasure-refining Taoist Qi that had evolved into a passage of the Great Way had gradually become dim and blurred. Until now, there was not much treasure-refining Taoist Qi left. Finally, under the shocked gaze of Lin Sun and Hu, the broken blade completely refined the treasure-refining Taoist Qi. On the other hand, 54 innate treasure markings that were bright and golden like enormous golden dragons surged into appearance on its surface. Clang! Before the two came to their senses, Lin Sun suddenly shone, as if he had accumulated too much power and began to release it at this moment. Boom! A divine splendor rushed out from the sharp edge of the broken blade, accompanied by a fierce aura. This gloomy cave was completely destroyed, unable to stop this terrifying aura's impact. A hole was forcefully blasted open, rushing to the surface, rushing into the clouds. What shocking precious light. It's like a bull, sharp and fiendish. There is definitely an exceptional great treasure that has appeared. A group of cultivators in the vicinity had been alarmed, and they shot their gazes over while revealing burning gazes. Quick, move now. Without hesitation, they teleported through the void and rushed over. But when they arrived, the shocking light suddenly vanished, and at the same time, Lin Sun and Hu's figures charged out from the ground. All of those cultivators were stunned, and then their expressions changed. Damn it, it's that guy. Oh, Lin, it's him. These practitioners were all trembling in their hearts and wanted to retreat. They thought of Lin Sun's brilliant record of killing Lu Ong in a fierce battle a few days ago. You want to snatch the treasure? Lin Sun showed a playful look. The bodies of these cultivators trembled in unison, and they hurriedly shook their heads. We're just passing by. Farewell. They didn't hesitate to turn around and leave as if there was oil on their feet. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. When did the cultivators on the ancient path of the starry sky become so timid? Hu grinned and said, "They've started to understand that you, demon god Lin, aren't someone they can offend at will." Lin Sun was surprised and said, "I just want to test the might of the broken blade." An additional natal treasure mark on the broken blade was able to increase a cultivator's combat strength by 1%. An additional 10 could increase a cultivator's combat strength by 10%. Now, the broken blade possessed 54 natal treasure marks. So how formidable would its might be? Ahu said, "Once you condense 100 innate treasured markings on this treasure, it'll undergo a completely new transformation and develop an artifact spirit embryo. At that time, relying on the might of this treasure would be sufficient to double your combat strength." Lin Sun sighed softly. "It's too difficult. The treasure refining chi I obtained before was so amazing, but it could only transform the broken blade to this level. I don't know how long it will take for me to condense 100 natal treasure marks." Immediately, Lin Sun smiled, "But I'm already satisfied." In the following period of time, the two of them began to move. They planned to use the remaining time to search for more treasure refining Dao Qi. On the way, they also learned some news. For example, in today's treasure refining place, many powerful figures were searching for and inquiring about Lin Sun's whereabouts, and threatened to kill him. This made Lin Sun's heart surge with killing intent. Did these bastards really think that Lin Sun was a fish on the chopping block that could be taken at will? At the same time, Lin Sun and Hu also heard the news about Sha Luqing, the divine sunshine ancient sect. This caused Ahu's beautiful eyes to suddenly narrow, and she said, "So it's an envoy of the divine oracle. No wonder he possesses such mysterious combat techniques." Lin Sun's heart could not calm down. He remembered something from the past. When he killed Zhu Inkong in the 9 Regions battlefield, he had inquired about the Quasi-Emperor Ba Qi from Zhu Inkong. It was not until Zhu Inkong died that he gave him an answer. Ba Qi, one of the founding elders of the divine sunshine ancient sect in the ancient Yin territory, hid in the border battlefield all year round, and was a quasi-emperor. Moreover, Zhu Inkong said with certainty that with Lin Sun's background, he might be able to easily kill Ba Qi when he stepped into the quasi-emperor realm in the future, but he would also not be able to withstand the wrath of the divine sunshine ancient sect. At that time, Lin Sun did not believe it at all. Zhu Inkong did not explain, but said, "You will understand how terrifying the divine sunshine ancient sect is in the future." However, Lin Sun did not expect that Sha Luqing was from the divine sunshine ancient sect. Is the divine sunshine ancient sect very powerful? Lin Sun noticed that Ahu's mood was a little strange. In the dark world on the starry sky ancient path, the divine sunshine ancient sect is regarded as one of the three giants. This force. Next, Ahu told Lin Sun some information about the divine sunshine ancient sect. Lin Sun soon understood that the divine sunshine ancient sect was a mysterious killer organization, and its successor was called the Oracle Emissary. They were secretive and cold-blooded. The most frightening thing was that the sect was extremely mysterious and came from the dark world. No one knew how terrifying its background was. This sect has a divine punishment ranking. Any assassination target that is targeted by them will be recorded on this ranking. You suspect that my name has also been recorded on the list? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Killers came and went without a trace, and it was impossible to guard against them. It would be a headache to be targeted by such a terrifying and mysterious killer organization. Ahu nodded and said with a strange look in his eyes, among the three giants in the dark world, in addition to the divine sunshine ancient sect, there is also the hidden land realm. Those bald donkeys call themselves the adversity travelers and take it as their duty to eradicate the heretics in the world. Don't forget that these bald donkeys have been targeting you for a long time. Lin Sun was stunned. What's the relationship between the hidden land realm and the Great Earth Temple? Ahu quickly explained, the Great Earth Temple is a branch of the hidden land realm, which can be called the Outer Gate. The real successors of the Inner Gate will never reveal their identity. Lin Sun was speechless. The grudge between him and the Great Earth Temple started from the tranquility scripture left by holy monk Duji. In those years, he killed many successors of the Great Earth Temple. For example, the 18 Ksitigarbha's sons and a sage named F.A. Lin. However, Lin Sun didn't expect that the Great Earth Temple in the ancient Desolation Realm had such a special relationship with the Hidden Land Realm in the Dark World. So, the black-robed monk we saw before is not from the Great Earth Temple, but from the Hidden Land Realm. Lin Sun's black eyes were deep. He thought of the black-robed monk with a black lotus mark on his forehead not long ago. If it were any other practitioner, his Taoist heart would collapse after being targeted by the two giants in the dark world in the starry sky. Lin Sun wasn't shocked or afraid, but he couldn't help frowning in awe. He knew the style of the Great Earth Temple best. Those bald donkeys were cold and unafraid of death. In order to kill the enemy, they were not afraid of death at all. What's the matter? Are you a little scared? Ahu joked. Lin Sun touched his nose and said, I'm just afraid of trouble. It's annoying enough to be targeted by a group of flies. Now, there's another group of flies. After a pause, he asked curiously, by the way, which is the other giant force in the dark world? A gleam of light flashed in Ahu's beautiful eyes. She said, Bronze Sparrow Tower, a mysterious organization whose power spreads all over the dark world and controls the chaotic land and the underground world. Nowadays, almost 90% of the villains on the bounty list on the ancient path in the starry sky come from the dark territory controlled by Bronze Sparrow Tower. Different from the divine sunshine ancient sect and the hidden land realm, Bronze Sparrow Tower is like the dominator who sets the order of the dark world. It maintains the operation of the whole dark world with its supreme will and iron-blooded power. I once heard that if the Copper Sparrow Pavilion wasn't holding down the fort, once the order of the dark world collapsed, the ferocious people scattered throughout the dark world would definitely swarm out and surge into the ancient path of the starry sky, bringing unimaginable calamities and slaughter. Speaking of this, Ahu looked at Lin Sun and said, Do you feel that Bronze Sparrow Tower doesn't act like a giant in the dark world at all? Lin Sun nodded. It's a pity that most practitioners in the world don't think so. In their opinion, if it weren't for the protection of the Bronze Sparrow Tower, the ferocious criminals in the dark world would have been annihilated a long time ago. The so-called underground world and the land of chaos would have been trampled and eradicated too. Lin Sun was stunned and asked thoughtfully, What about you? What do you think of Bronze Sparrow Tower? Ahu's eyes were clear, and her expression was rarely serious. She said seriously, I only know that without Bronze Sparrow Tower in the Dark World, the ancient path in the starry sky would have been in chaos. It was about 10:30. Chapter 1803. So far, Lin Sun had a rough idea in his mind. In the dark world of the starry sky ancient path, there were three giants: the divine illuminating ancient sect, the hidden land realm, and the Bronze Sparrow Tower. Among them, the God-illuminating ancient sect saw themselves as the oracle emissaries, carrying out the orders of the gods to kill. The hidden land realm regarded themselves as the traveler of misfortune, and took it as their duty to eradicate the heretics in the world. On the other hand, Copper Sparrow Tower was like the maker and defender of the order of the dark world. Its influence spread throughout the entire dark world, and its influence was far-reaching. Where there is light, there is darkness. As for where the dark world was, most of the cultivators in the world were unable to say. Even Ahu only said that the dark world was just a general term. Generally, the more turbulent and chaotic a place was, the more likely it was to be infiltrated by dark forces. This undoubtedly made the three dark giants, the divine sunshine ancient sect, the hidden land realm, and the Copper Sparrow Tower, appear even more mysterious. From this moment on, Lin Sun had a trace of vigilance in his heart. Being targeted by two dark forces, the divine sunlight ancient sect and the hidden land realm, no one could remain indifferent. One day later, the entire treasure refinement grounds suddenly trembled while the heavens and the earth shook, and all the cultivators scattered throughout the area stopped what they were doing. "This place is going to fall back into the seal," someone whispered. "The true danger and test will begin now. Don't forget that in the past, there were only a handful of people who could walk out of the Kunlun ruins alive." Someone had a solemn expression. The treasure refinement ground was only the outskirts of the Kunlun ruins, so it was not that dangerous. However, it was different in the depths of the Kunlun ruins. It was filled with killing intent, and it was extremely likely that even a piece of mud or an inconspicuous blade of grass could take the life of the great sage of ultimate sin. This was not an exaggeration. It had truly happened in the past. In the depths of the Kunlun ruins, there are great dangers, but there are also great fortuitous encounters. The secrets are like a fog, and no one has truly seen through it since the ancient times. This time, I wonder how many people will be able to obtain the fortuitous encounter. Some people's thoughts were wandering. Boom! It wasn't long before a muffled rumble resounded in the sky, and it caused one's heart to tremble. Then, one after another, thick green vines descended from the sky and landed in different areas of the treasure refining grounds. The ascending heaven vine has appeared. Many cultivators began to move. Some summoned their secret treasures. Some formed hand seals, and some activated their blood chi. They were sensing each other. There were countless heaven ascension vines. Cultivators only needed to climb up the vines to leave the treasure refinement ground and enter the real Kunlun ruins. However, almost all of these heaven ascending vines lead to a land of death. If one was unlucky enough to be chosen, it was highly likely that they would end up in a land of great danger. In the past, countless cultivators had accidentally entered the death zone and become a true dead person. "Let's get moving." Oh spoke. She tossed out a silver hairpin that was densely inscribed with Tao markings, and diagrams flashed out. Buzz. The silver hairpin glowed and suddenly pointed in a distant direction. "Let's go." Who led the way? And Lin followed closely behind. Seeing this, Lin Sun suddenly remembered that he had obtained 3 treasures when he passed the last 3 tests of Green Cloud Path in the Heaven Accessing Place. One was the Wings of the Burning God, one was the Heavenly Mandate Profound Energy, and the last was a treasure called the Heavenly Cycle Thousand Trickeries Guide. According to what the mysterious woman said, the Universe Thousand Trap was extremely profound. No matter if it was getting lost in the boundless sea of stars, falling into the maze of the heavens and the earth, or straying into a perilous predicament, one could rely on this treasure to deduce the path of survival. Here we are. Before long, who stopped? In front of a mountain in the distance, there was a huge green vine as thick as a bucket hanging from the sky. From a distance, It looked like a green python hanging upside down from the sky, whose silver hairpin was pointing at this heaven-ascending vine. Lin Sun looked up, but he could not see how long the vine was. It seemed to extend from the sky. Once you ascend to the sky, you will arrive at the Kunlun Mountains. That is a boundlessly vast remnant that hides countless secrets and dangers. After arriving there, you must be careful. Who exhorted and was about to take action? A voice as gentle as the spring breeze suddenly sounded. What a coincidence to meet you here. Along with the voice, the void in the distance rippled, and 3 figures walked out one after another. The first figure was thin, elegant, and handsome, with wide sleeves and a belt. It was Meng Yi, the pureblood descendant of the Qiongqi fighting clan. Ji Qian and Jiang Heng of Xuanji sect were beside him. When they saw Lin Sun and Hu, they were both stunned. Ji Qian frowned, and Jiang Heng's pretty face turned cold. When Lin Sun saw Jiang Heng, he was also surprised. He recognized her as the woman who had regarded him as a thief in the battle of flying immortals. What a coincidence indeed. Lin Sun smiled, his eyes playful. He glanced at Ji Qian and said, "If I guess correctly, you were the one who tried to take away the treasure in my hands, right?" Ji Qian snorted coldly. "Back then, you stole the divine medicine of my Xuanji sect in the battle of flying immortals. I haven't settled the score with you." Lin Sun sneered. "Oh, is that battle of flying immortals the backyard of your Xuanji sect? Just because some divine medicine without a master caught your eye, it became yours? Everyone, let's not talk about past grievances. It's just a small matter. If Brother Lin had any losses, let me, Meng Yi, compensate you, okay?" Meng Yi said with a smile. His voice was gentle like a spring breeze. "No." Lin Sun's answer was very stiff. Meng Yi's expression froze, as if he did not expect Lin Sun to be so difficult to deal with. Ji Qian and Jiang Heng were already angry, glaring at Lin Sun. They were about to say something when they were stopped by Meng Yi. Meng Yi said, "Forget it. The treasure refining site is about to fall into a seal. Instead of arguing about the trivial matters of the past, it's better to leave this place first." Lin Sun and Ahu looked at each other and did not object. Next, Meng Yi brought Ji Qian and Jiang Heng with him and took the lead. They landed steadily on a fat and huge green leaf on the ascending vine. Ahu and Lin Sun also chose a leaf and stepped on it. There was no need to climb at all. The thick vine began to shrink rapidly into the sky, bringing Lin Sun and the others into the sky. "Brother Lin, I'm Meng Yi from the Qiongqi battle clan." On the way, Meng Yi cupped his hands and spoke. Lin Sun glanced at him and said, "It's not that I'm being unreasonable, but you can just say what you want." Meng Yi thought for a moment and said, "I'm here with the intention of heading to a dangerous place in the Kunlun ruins to search for a fortuitous encounter. With the help of the flying celestial token, I have a 70% chance of obtaining this fortuitous encounter." Before he could finish, Lin Sun smiled. "You're also here for the flying celestial token?" Ji Qian and Jiang Heng could not help but frown. They felt that Lin Sun's smile and words carried an indescribable sense of ridicule, which made them feel very uncomfortable. However, Meng Yi seemed to be unaware of it and nodded calmly. "That's right. However, I don't want to make things difficult for Brother Lin. If it's possible, I hope to cooperate with Brother Lin and go to that place of fortuitous encounter together. Brother Lin will definitely have share of the gains." Before Lin Sun could reply, Ahu suddenly said, "Fellow Taoist, can you reveal which place of fortuitous encounter we're going to?" Meng Yi fell silent for a moment and said, "The pilgrimage platform." It was just 3 words, but it caused Ahu's beautiful eyes to narrow as she said, "As far as I know, since ancient times, anyone who entered that place never returned. It can be said to be the most forbidden place in the Kunlun ruins. Even with the help of the flying celestial token, it won't be of much use." Meng Yi said in surprise, "Miss, you know about the pilgrimage platform as well?" "That's right. Since ancient times, no one has been able to survive from it. However, it's different this time." As he spoke, he flipped his palm and a sealed scroll appeared. Even though it was sealed, it still emitted a vast and mysterious aura. It was like a decree from the heavens. Although it was not revealed, it already possessed supreme power. This is a scroll of the pilgrimage tablet inscription that my ancestor obtained by chance. There are some clues imprinted with supreme divine power, all of which are related to the pilgrimage platform. With this treasure and the help of the flying celestial token, it's enough for me to make a trip there. Meng Yi revealed a confident look. The pilgrimage tablet inscription. Both Ji Qian and Jiang Hong were surprised. They did not know that Meng Yi had such a magical item in his possession. Ahu looked at Lin Sun. It was up to Lin Sun to make the decision. However, she had already told Lin Sun that Meng Yi would not dare to lie, because without the flying celestial token, he would not dare to enter the pilgrimage platform. Under such circumstances, even if he harbored evil intentions, he would at least not dare to act recklessly during the trip to the pilgrimage platform. Lin Sun said, "I'm very curious. What exactly is hidden in the pilgrimage platform that makes you insist on going even though you know it's dangerous?" Meng Yi said word by word. Rumor has it that the secret to becoming an emperor or ancestor is hidden there. His words shocked everyone, and their hearts trembled. Becoming an emperor or ancestor, not to mention a peerless great saint. Even a quasi-emperor or a half-step emperor would fight for such a supreme opportunity if they knew about it. At that moment, Lin Sun fell silent as well. You don't have to make a decision in a hurry. There's still half a month before you go to the pilgrimage platform. If you make a decision during this time, you can contact me at any time. As he spoke, Meng Yi handed a message talisman to Lin Sun. Crush this talisman, and I will come to meet you at once. After a pause, he continued, to show my sincerity, I will go in and out with you in this operation. If I encounter any ignorant fools who try to obstruct me, I will be the first to kill them. As he finished speaking, a wisp of piercingly cold coldness suffused his warm eyes. I'll think about it. Lin Sun took the message talisman. Meng Yi smiled and said, I look forward to working with an extraordinary person like Brother Lin. From beginning to end, he had been humble and gentle, well-behaved, well-mannered, and sincere. Even Lin Sun could not find a reason to hate him. Of course, one could not judge a person's heart from his face. Anyone who could become a peerless great saint was not a simple character. Boom! Not long after, the sky-climbing vine shook violently and rushed into a deep and dark crack in the sky with Lin Sun and others. Chapter 1804. Rich and pure vitality rushed over. In a flash, Lin Sun felt that he had entered a deity land. The mountains and rivers here were verdant, the land was vast, and the resources were abundant. The sky was crystal blue, and all the plants were full of vitality. Some common wildflowers were gushing with wisps of essence, filling the air with a refreshing fragrance. Many ancient trees stood tall in the sky. When the branches and leaves on them swayed, a waterfall-like light rain would fall, which was formed by rich vitality. Everything looked like the legendary Holy Land, a blessed land where the gods lived. Moreover, different from the treasure refining place, there were amazing life fluctuations in this world. Screech! In the sky, a clear cry broke through the clouds. A group of white cranes, like a group of white rainbows, flashed across the sky. Kunlun cranes. It is said that these cranes are born with the Kunlun ruins, which is an auspicious sign. I didn't expect that we would see them as soon as we arrived. Meng Yi praised and said with a smile, Doesn't this mean that we will be able to avoid danger and have good luck? Thank you, Brother Meng. Ji Qian also smiled. Lin Sun and Ahu looked around and sent silently. They were not the only group in this mountain and river. In the area not far away, other cultivators emerged out of thin air one after another. As soon as they arrived, they couldn't help but exclaim, because this world was really beautiful, a pure land of immortals. Standing in it, one could naturally feel the breath of the Great Way without exerting any force at all. Where's the sky-climbing vine just now? Why did it disappear? Lin Sun asked suddenly. Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would pay attention to such an inconspicuous little problem. Even so, Meng explained patiently, the sky-climbing vine is just a means to enter the Kunlun ruins. It connects the treasure refining place and the Kunlun ruins. Brother Lin can regard it as a bridge between the two worlds. Lin Sun nodded. He didn't speak without thinking, but he remembered the origin of the treasure refining place. If he hadn't obtained the copper piece left behind by the artifact refining furnace, he wouldn't even dare believe that such a large treasure refinement area was actually formed from the artifact refining furnace. What was the origin of this Kunlun realm relic that he was standing on? Could it be? Was it also transformed from some kind of divine object? It was obvious that neither Meng Yi nor anyone else could answer this question. A shrill cry suddenly sounded out in the distance, and it was extremely miserable and shrill. It seemed to be extremely ear-piercing amidst this peaceful and tranquil atmosphere. Lin Sun and the others were awestruck and looked over at the same time. In front of an ancient tree in the distance, a purple-robed man's neck was strangled, and his body was suspended in midair. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. What was strangling his neck was a verdant tree branch that was hundreds of feet long. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the purple-robed man's body rapidly shriveled up. It was as if all of his energy, blood, and flesh were being devoured. In the end, even the skin that was left turned into ashes and scattered on the ground. This strange and terrifying scene caused the expressions of countless people in the surroundings to change greatly, and they exclaimed in shock while a chill ran down their spines. That's the first successor of Sanyue Saber Sect. He is also a great saint with strong combat power. But he died just like that? Someone was frightened and said in a trembling voice. They had just arrived at the Kunlun realm relic, and a great saint had suffered such a terrible disaster. Who wouldn't be frightened? Many people realized that this world in front of them seemed to be as peaceful as a pure land of immortals. But in fact, there were many unknown dangers buried in it. It had been like this since ancient times. Lin Sun looked carefully. The branches of the ancient tree were verdant, towering to the sky, and flowing with vitality like a waterfall. It looked extremely sacred, and there was no trace of danger at all. But who would have thought that one of its branches could easily kill a peerless great saint? When he looked at the mountains and rivers again, Lin Sun couldn't help showing a dignified expression, and a strong sense of crisis surged in his heart. Don't approach a forest, avoid a mountain, take a detour when you encounter water, retreat when you encounter fog. Ahu said softly. This is a lesson learned by countless seniors who have gone to the Kunlun ruins in the past with their blood and lives. We can't be careless. As she spoke, she looked at Meng Yi and the others and said, Everyone, we're leaving this place first. All right, I'll wait for your reply. Meng Yi did not ask them to stay. Farewell. Lin Sun and Ahu turned around and left. At the same time, many cultivators who had arrived at the Kunlun ruins started moving one after another, flashing in different directions. The Kunlun ruins were huge. No one knew how many secrets were hidden in this world, and no one could measure its vastness. The cultivators who had entered the Kunlun ruins this time had come prepared. They had planned ahead of time, and there was no lack of illustrations and clues related to the Kunlun ruins in their hands. Therefore, when they moved, they would not wander around like headless flies. If they did, it would be extremely easy for them to encounter mishaps. Just like the purple-robed man from before, he was strangled to death just by getting close to an ancient tree. Similarly, it was the same for Ahu. She had come for an immortality peach tree. With her leading the way, Lin Sun naturally did not have to worry about accidentally entering a dangerous place. Brother Meng, what exactly do you plan to do? Are you really going to work with them? Ji Qian could not help but ask via voice transmission when Lin Sun and Ahu's figures disappeared. Meng Yi smiled and asked, why not? If we really try to snatch it by force, I'm afraid we won't be able to take them down without paying a heavy price with our strength. Are you sure? Ji Qian stared at Meng Yi. He had a feeling that Meng Yi was plotting something. Meng Yi patted Ji Qian's shoulder and said warmly, Brother G, we're old friends. You just have to follow me. I've already decided on everything else." After a pause, he looked into the distance and said, "Let's go. Before heading to the pilgrimage platform, let's go to a blessed land first. If we're lucky, we might even be able to obtain some good things." As he spoke, he walked forward with his hands behind his back. Ji Qian and Zhang Heng looked at each other and followed. "Eldest senior brother, do you trust this person?" Zhang Heng asked via voice transmission. She was somewhat worried. Meng Yi gave her the feeling that he was like an unfathomable abyss. He was shrewd and unfathomable. "Don't worry. Meng Yi won't dare to do anything to us." Ji Qian was very confident. He came from a Ji clan, an imperial family, and had a very deep relationship with the Qianqi battle clan. Moreover, he had been friends with Meng Yi for a long time and was very clear about Meng Yi's character. However, the only thing that Ji Qian was not sure about was whether Meng Yi really decided to cooperate with Lin Sun and Ah Hu just for the flying fairy token. A silver hairpin floated in front of Ah Hu, guiding the way. Lin Sun followed closely behind, extremely vigilant along the way. The Kunlun ruins was like a paradise, with mountains and rivers, flowing with immortal clouds, and full of vitality. But no one knew how many dangers were hidden here. "Look, isn't that Lin Sun?" On the way, a group of figures appeared. When they saw Lin Sun and Ah Hu, they couldn't help but show hostility. Lin Sun glanced at them and immediately recognized that they were Kuan Julin and the successors of the primitive Taoism court. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes burn with hatred. Lin Sun was about to make a move without the slightest hesitation, but he was stopped by Ah Hu. "Don't move. This area is filled with too many dangers. Pull one hair and the whole body will be affected. Don't forget how that Sanyue Saber Sex disciple died." Lin Sun's eyes narrowed, and he restrained his killing intent. "Lin Sun, aren't you very bold? Why don't you dare to make a move?" Kuan Julin said coldly with a hint of sarcasm. At this time, they were only a few hundred feet away from each other. But it was obvious that Kuan Julin and the others had no intention of making a move. They must have known that they would encounter unpredictable dangers if they made a move here. Lin Sun retorted sarcastically, "If it weren't for when Qingxue last time, I'm afraid you would have been a dead man, right?" Kuan Julin's face suddenly became ugly. "I'll give you a chance. If you dare to make a move now, I promise to give you a dignified death. If you don't dare, get out of my way." Lin Sun and Ah Hu went straight forward, not avoiding Kuan Julin and the others at all. Kuan Julin's face turned red, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged. He almost couldn't help making a move several times. But in the end, he could only watch Lin Sun and Ah Hu swagger past them. "Useless." Lin Sun left these two words and went away without looking back. "Lin Sun, the next time we meet, I will tear you into pieces." Kuan Julin could no longer control his anger and let out a roar full of killing intent. Beside him, all the descendants of the prehistoric Dao court were furious as well. Lin Sun was looking down on them too much. Boom! Suddenly, a gray and hazy bolt of lightning flashed in a nearby area. Kuan Julin was startled and quickly restrained the overflowing killing intent. The gray lightning seemed to lose its target and soon collapsed and disappeared. Seeing this scene, Kuan Julin and the others all gasped. If they couldn't help but attack Lin Sun just now, the consequences would be absolutely unimaginable. At the same time, Lin Sun also noticed the sudden appearance of the gray lightning in his heart. So, in this Kunlun relic, there is no way to fight at all. He couldn't help asking. Just now, Kuan Julin just showed a trace of killing intent, and a gray lightning was drawn out, which was too shocking. Ah Hu shook her head. It's not that exaggerated. The Kunlun relic has its own rules of heaven and earth. When we adapt to the rules here, we can identify and see through some of the dangers buried in this world. Lin Sun nodded. 10 minutes later, with a buzz, the silver hairpin leading the way trembled slightly and suddenly pointed to a direction. There was a vast forest there, with branches and leaves reaching to the sky and covering the sun. Ah Hu was obviously prepared for this. She flipped her palm, and a black tree branch appeared in front of her. Chapter 1805. Taking a deep breath, Ahu took the immortality peach tree in his hand and led the way. In the Kunlun relic, there has always been a saying that don't enter the forest. I'm sure that there must be great dangers in this forest. We should be careful when we act later. She exhorted. Whoosh! Lin Sun took out the broken sword, carried the insignificant bough on his back, and covered his whole body with a soft silver armor. This armor was one of the trophies he obtained from the Child of Hell when he was at the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass. It was called Heavy Wave and contained 64 sets of defensive Taoist patterns, which was quite precious and rare. Soon, the two entered the forest. Their field of vision suddenly darkened, and a gloomy and horrible aura came to their faces. Ahu's expression also became solemn. In the forest, ancient trees towered into the sky, and vines as thick as pythons hung down. The ground was piled up with a thick pile of decayed leaves, which made a rustling sound when they stepped on it. The air was cold and damp with a rancid smell. Walking in it, the sky was covered by the shade of the trees. It was dark and gloomy, and the silence was frightening. According to the information I've obtained, there are numerous strange poisonous insects hibernating in this forest, and all of them are extremely terrifying. In the past, many experts that have come to search for the immortality peach tree have unfortunately suffered misfortune here, and not even their corpses remain. On the way, Ahu said, but even so, it still can't stop practitioners from coming here because peach trees are so magical that they can drive people crazy. It's really weird here. Walking in it makes my mind unsteady, as if there is a kind of force interfering with my soul silently. Lin Sun frowned. It's normal. In the past, many practitioners got lost here because their souls were eroded so that they suffered a disaster before they even noticed it. Along the way, the two moved forward vigilantly and saw many horrible scenes. There were ferocious and gloomy beast roars, which shook the trees and made them rustle. There were ferocious birds flying in the sky, exuding a barbaric overlord's aura. Just looking at them from a distance made Lin Sun and Ahu feel cold. It was too horrible. At the same time, there were many ferocious creatures that didn't exist in the outside world. For example, a black snail as huge as a mountain, a dark green centipede with thousands of compound eyes. Even Lin Sun and Ahu could only retreat far away, because those ferocious creatures were so powerful that they couldn't fight against them at all. Fortunately, they were extremely vigilant along the way. Once they noticed something was wrong, they would take a detour and avoid it early. This place is really terrible. If we rush into it rashly, no matter who we are, I'm afraid we will suffer. Lin Sun knew very well that if he hadn't led the way, they wouldn't have been able to reach this point because there were too many dangers along the way. In the Kunlun realm, there are countless such places of danger. Comparatively speaking, that pilgrimage platform is the most taboo place of danger. Ahu said quickly, before I came to the Kunlun of ruins, I spent. I Ahu. Before ruins, I spent. I suddenly. Lin Sun's hair stood on end. Blazing divine light flowed out of his body, and he carried Ahu and dodged far away. Soundlessly, an enormous hole appeared where they stood earlier, and then a swarm of thumb-sized multicolored insects surged out from the hole like tidewater. They were a dense mass of insects, and every single one of them emitted a gloomy and savage aura. Multicolored corpse insects. Ahu's eyes narrowed, and her expression suddenly changed. She and Lin Sun stayed far away and restrained their aura. It was because this kind of insect was rumored to be condensed from the corpse chi of great ancient ferocious creatures. It was easy to kill them, but the corpse chi they emitted after death was an extremely terrifying poison. A slight touch would cause one's soul to be corroded and one's cultivation to be tainted. Whoosh, more and more multicolored corpse insects rushed out of the hole and spread in all directions. Lin Sun and Ahu didn't dare to stop and move forward quickly. Suddenly, a whimpering sound rang out in the depths of the forest. It was like the cry of a god, making one's hair stand on end. Then, those multicolored corpse insects rushed towards Lin Sun and Ahu as if they were driven. Ahu's face changed. Damn it, someone has mastered the method of controlling multicolored corpse insects and wants to deal with us secretly. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. He spread out his spiritual awareness and swept in the direction of the sound. Vaguely, he could detect a figure hiding in the shadow of a big tree with a vague aura. Whoosh, but before Lin Sun could locate them carefully, the overwhelming multicolored corpse insects in the nearby area had rushed over. The auras of these insects were gloomy and savage, and they emitted a nauseating aura of death. They covered the surroundings, causing one to be unable to escape or avoid them. We have to fight our way out. Ahu's beautiful eyes were full of cruelty, but Lin Sun stopped her. Whoosh! Almost in an instant, Little Silver's figure swept out of Lin Sun's body. He glanced at the multicolored corpse insects rushing over, and his handsome little face showed an unspeakable disdain and disgust. Boom! He stepped into the void, exuding a fierce aura, which belonged to the bloodline power of the spirit-eating insects. The bodies of all the multicolored corpse bugs that charged over from all directions trembled, and then they rustled as they fell from the sky. They shivered and squeaked, and they seemed as if they were submitting to a monarch. The sound of the sound became urgent and impassioned. It seemed that they had sensed something wrong and were driving the multicolored corpse insects with all their strength. But it was all in vain. Under the deterrence of Little Silver's power, these ferocious and terrifying insects, which were enough to make any cultivator turn pale, were all as obedient as humble slaves. Lin Sun and Ahu looked at each other in shock. Perhaps this was the saying that everything has its vanquisher. It should be noted that Little Silver didn't need to do anything at all. He suppressed these multicolored corpse insects with his aura alone. Go! A more amazing scene appeared. As Little Silver gave the order, the multicolored corpse insects roared up and rushed in the direction of the sound of the distant sound. Oh no! Thousands of meters away, a man in black suddenly changed his face. He put away the bamboo flute in his hand and turned to flee. Master, shall we go after them? Little Silver said with a murderous look. I can feel that there are many insects hibernating in this forest, but their bloodlines are far inferior to mine. I can make them obey my call. Lin Sun and Ahu's eyes lit up at the same time, and they agreed without hesitation. Little Silver immediately led the way, and a swarm of multicolored corpse insects swarmed nearby like pioneers. Lin Sun and Ahu followed him, and they couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. This forest was full of danger. On the way here, the two of them had been extremely vigilant and cautious, and they had almost been killed many times. But now it was completely different. With Little Silver, they could control the vicious, poisonous insects scattered in this forest. In this way, the danger they encountered along the way was bound to be reduced to a minimum. Whoosh! More and more insects began to appear in the forest and join Little Silver's team. Among these insects, there were green-faced ghost insects as big as a palm, bamboo devil insects as thin as needles, and so on. They gathered so densely that they covered the sky and the earth, and Lin Sun and Ahu couldn't help gasping. They couldn't imagine how there could be so many strange and vicious insects hibernating in this forest. Boom! On the way ahead, a huge black snail as big as a mountain was alarmed. Its breath was extremely terrifying. At the beginning, Lin Sun and Ahu would definitely avoid it and not dare to approach it. But at this moment, to Lin Sun and Ahu's astonishment, this huge black snail ran away, crushing countless towering trees along the way. Obviously, this black snail also knew that Little Silver and his insect army were not to be trifled with. If I had known this, I should have released Little Silver before the action. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. Today, he finally opened his eyes and saw the real power of spirit-eating insects. They were really like the king of insects, extremely powerful. Master, this forest is called the immortal ancient insect lair, and it has existed since ancient times. These insects that are distributed here are all for the sake of protecting the peach blossom secret realm behind the immortal ancient insect lair. On the way, Little Silver communicated with those insects and learned a lot of secrets. However, most of these insects had no intelligence, so their knowledge was extremely limited. Even so, Lin Sun and Ah were refreshed. Peach Garden. The legendary peach tree of immortality must be there. At the same time, in the depths of the forest, the black-clothed man flashed and moved with an anxious expression as if he was frightened. Finally, he came to an empty area in the depths of the forest. It was empty and barren, and only a door with flowing light appeared in the void at the center. In front of the door, a group of cultivators, both men and women, were guarding. They all had extraordinary appearances and wore the same clothes. Obviously, they came from the same force. Oh no, someone is approaching. Govin informed the young master. The black-clothed man said anxiously as soon as he arrived. Those men and women were stunned and showed astonished expressions. Only our myriad origin spirit sect knows the path to the immortal ancient insect lair. How could others possibly get close? That's impossible, right? This path is filled with danger, and ordinary people wouldn't be able to get here alive. Besides that, the young master has just entered the peach garden, and he gave the order that no one is allowed to disturb him. These disciples from the myriad origin spirit sect spoke at once, and their expressions were slightly indifferent. The black-clothed man was anxious to the point his forehead was covered in sweat, and he said, "All of you don't understand at all. That man and woman aren't afraid of our insect control techniques at all. Moreover, the insects in the immortal ancient insect lair are being controlled and controlled by them, and they're charging over here right now." A short moment of silence appeared, and those men and women revealed expressions of disbelief. After all, perhaps their myriad origin spirit sect couldn't compare to the 6 great Tao courts and the 10 great war clans in the starry sky. However, very few powers could compare to them in the Tao of insect control. Yet now, such an unusual thing had actually occurred. How could anyone not be shocked? Whem, whem, whem. A wave of hissing that sounded like a tide suddenly resounded from afar. After that, the expressions of those disciples changed drastically, and they finally understood why the black-clothed man was panicking to such an extent. Chapter 1806. The dense swarm of insects that covered the heavens and the earth swept over, and all of them emanated a savage and ferocious aura that caused others to shudder with fear. Attack! The descendants of Tianyuan spirit sect were so frightened that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. All of them subconsciously attacked with all their strength. It was terrible. Even though they were most skilled in the Tao of insect mastery, they'd never experienced such a horrifying scene. Boom! They each took out their treasures and launched their attacks. Seeing this in the distance, Little Silver waved his hand coldly and said, "Kill them." Buzz, buzz, buzz. The tide of insects roared forward like a rolling black tide. In just a few breaths of time, the descendants of the sky primordial spirit sect had disappeared, leaving behind only a ground of broken bones. Their flesh and souls had all been devoured. Lin Sun and Ah were both shocked. The lethality of these poisonous insects was beyond their imagination. There were many great saints among those cultivators, but they couldn't withstand their attack at all. Then Little Silver drove away those vicious insects. Lin Sun and Ahu stepped forward and came to the front of the colorful void portal. This was the entrance to the secret realm of Peachland. "You guard here. If anyone approaches, kill him." Little Silver gave the order, and the tide-like poisonous insects all bowed their heads to obey. "Look, this little guy is much more powerful than you now." Oh joked. Lin Sun smiled bitterly, but he was actually very proud of Little Silver. This little guy had made a great contribution this time. Without any delay, they entered the void door together. Buzz, as if the stars had moved, the scene in front of them suddenly changed. "It's so beautiful." Oh was amazed. In her field of vision, there was a boundless peach forest. The flowers were in full bloom, hanging all over the treetops, and the stamens were pink and crystal, flowing with a glow. The peach forest was dazzling and the air was filled with a refreshing fragrance. A clear stream zigzagged through the peach blossom forest. What was astonishing was that the clear stream water was actually formed by the condensation of dense spiritual energy. The spiritual chi is too rich. This is definitely an auspicious place. Lin Sun was also surprised. In this secret realm, in addition to the peach forest, there were some ancient rocks and plants, all of which were extraordinary and magical. Moreover, the aura of the great way between heaven and earth flowed endlessly like a tide, giving people a feeling that it was close at hand and within reach. It said that the place where the peach tree takes root is where a first-class divine range in the Kunlun relic converges. Now I see it. It really deserves its reputation. Ahu said, holding the peach branch in her palm and carefully sensing it. After a while, she suddenly looked up at the peach branch and said, "It's over there. Let's go." As they walked forward and entered the peach blossom forest, they felt as if their entire bodies were soaked in spring water of spiritual chi. All they breathed in was the rich vitality of the great path. They felt relaxed and happy, as if they were walking on air. If one looked carefully, every single peach tree was exceptionally vigorous. Their branches and leaves were jade green, as if they were carved from jade, and they flowed with a green glow, causing them to seem extremely miraculous. Unfortunately, they weren't true immortal peach trees, just ordinary spiritual plants. However, they were far superior to some of the ancient trees in the outside world. Stop! Suddenly, several figures appeared in front of them. All of them had extraordinary auras, especially the golden-armored man in the lead. When he opened and closed his eyes, divine light shot out. It was extremely terrifying. After carefully sensing them, they realized that all of them were ultimate sage. Lin Sun and Ahu looked calm. They were not surprised. When they entered this place earlier, there was a group of cultivators guarding the entrance of the secret realm. Obviously, someone had entered this place long ago. "How did you get in?" The golden-armored man was aggressive. His eyes were as cold as knives as he glanced at Lin Sun and Ahu. This made Lin Sun feel strange. Obviously, the golden-armored man did not know his identity. Ahu said via voice transmission, "If I'm not wrong, they should have entered the Kunlun ruins from another entrance, so they don't know our identities." Lin Sun came to a realization. When he was at the Flying Deity River, he had learned that there was more than one entrance to the Kunlun ruins. "Of course we walked in," Lin Sun said casually. The golden-armored man's face darkened, and he ordered, "Then please walk back. If you don't die." Boom! Lin Sun took a step forward, and the aura around him rumbled as he pushed out his palm. He could not be bothered to talk nonsense. Lin Sun's domineering and direct actions infuriated the golden-armored man. Without hesitation, he also pushed out his palm with all his strength. However, in the next moment, he was suppressed to the ground by a slap. Boom! The earth trembled, the peach trees nearby swayed, and the petals fell in profusion. "You want to occupy this place with just this little ability? You're courting death, aren't you?" Lin Sun said calmly. The golden-armored man's companions were shocked at first, and then they became angry and attacked together. Bang! 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 A series of explosions rang out. Lin Sun attacked decisively, suppressing these powerhouses one by one and making them kneel on the ground. From the beginning to the end, Ahu had been watching with a smile. Did these idiots really think that they could be lawless just because they became great saints? Didn't they see how Yin Chunjun and Luong died? "Who are you?" The golden-armored man's expression was already aghast. In a casual manner, he suppressed them one by one. This made him realize that he had kicked an iron plate this time. However, the golden-armored man could not remember when such a peerless, ruthless person had appeared on the starry ancient path. That face was too strange. "Does it matter who we are?" Lin Sun's eyes were full of killing intent. Noticing this scene, the golden-armored man felt cold all over and said, "My friend, we are the descendants of 10,000 Spirit Sect. It was just a misunderstanding just now. Please forgive us." 10,000 Spirit Sect? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. The golden-armored man and others nodded quickly. Sorry, I haven't heard of it. Lin Sun shook his head. His words stunned the golden-armored man and others. If he was a practitioner on the starry ancient path, how could he not have heard of 10,000 Spirit Sect? This guy must have pretended to be confused on purpose. They really wronged Lin Sun, but Lin Sun would not explain. Next, a dull sound rang out. Soon after, the place quieted down, and a pile of corpses lay on the ground. The brave one in a head-on confrontation. If Lin Sun was not strong enough this time, he was doomed to end the same way. Without delay, Lin Sun and Ahu continued to move forward. 10 minutes later, the field of vision in front of them suddenly widened, and the peach forest all over the mountains and fields disappeared. A plain with colorful luster appeared. Divine light and auspicious clouds flowed, and the world was bathed in a sacred atmosphere. Look, Ahu's eyes lit up. In the center of the plain, there was an ancient tree that seemed to hold up the sky. Its branches were like umbrellas, covering the sky and the sun, and its trunk was as thick as a dragon, soaring into the sky. Rays of multicolored light drifted down from the tree like rainbows, and also like galaxies, incomparably sacred. There was a breath of divinity in the air here. Taking a deep breath was like swallowing ambrosia, opening all the pores all over the body and making them feel comfortable all over. Lin Sun could not help but gasp in shock. This place was as unreal as a legend, too dreamy and sacred. The two moved forward at the same time, and soon saw the true appearance of this divine tree. It was extremely vigorous, with the veins on the trunk like pythons and dragons, showing a kind of jade-like luster, and its leaves were green, blooming auspicious clouds. The closer they got, the more insignificant they felt because this divine tree was too tall like the backbone of the world. The immortality peach tree. Ahu spat out these 3 words in a light voice. She saw the fruits on the tree, and they were dazzling like suns. A sweet fragrance suffused the air and penetrated through the emerald green leaves. The ancient tree flowed with the glow of the Tao, and it formed a shapeless force that prevented the fragrance from leaking out. However, strands of fragrance still permeated the air, and it seeped into their souls and intoxicated them. Those were immortality peaches. They were fist-sized, glistening, pure, and resplendent. Some were crimson red, some were snow white, and some were verdant. Some even flowed with hazy violet light, and emanated a myriad of strands of Tao radiance. Lin Sun and Ahu were stunned as if they'd seen a miracle. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they would probably not dare believe that such miraculous treasures existed in the world. Wait! Lin Sun suddenly recovered from his shock, and his deep black eyes looked towards the bottom of the immortality peach tree. That place was covered in surging, auspicious radiance, and it was dazzling and resplendent. But if one looked carefully, one would notice numerous skeletons piled up on the ground. Some were in the form of humans, and some were left behind by living beings of other races. These skeletons were covered by the divine radiance. If one's mind was completely attracted by the divine fruits on the tree, one would be utterly unable to notice them. Ahu shuddered all over and sobered up. Could these be the experts who came here in search of immortality peaches in the past, but perished here? Lin Sun spoke in a low voice, and his expression became solemn and vigilant. The more incredible a fortune was, the more unpredictable and great danger it was accompanied by. If one was immersed in the divine and tempting scene just now and neglected the dangers here, then it would be extremely easy for one to suffer misfortune. That should be the case. Ahu observed them briefly, and he noticed that the skeletons were extremely well preserved without any damage. However, all of them were suffused with the aura of being eroded by the passage of time. Obviously, they had existed for a very long time. Ahu walked around the divine tree, and he was instantly stunned when he arrived at the back of the divine tree. He quickly sent a voice transmission to Lin Sun. "Brother Lin, come over and have a look." Lin Sun walked over and looked along Ahu's gaze, and he saw 3 figures standing at the bottom of the divine tree. A blue-robed man with an ancient sword on his back, a woman in a phoenix robe with her long hair coiled up in a bun, and a white-haired Taoist in linen robe who looked like a teenager. All of them had their eyes closed, and their breath was faintly discernible. They were silent and motionless like old monks in meditation, which was extremely strange. Not far away, there stood a green wooden tablet on which a line of words was engraved in ancient Taoist script. Life is like a dream. How many springs and autumns do people live? Apart from this, there was no other record. Lin Sun was stunned and thought, what does this mean? Is there any mystery hidden in it? Ahu seemed to have guessed something, and he gently read this sentence on the tablet. As his voice sounded, an incredible scene appeared. A wisp of crystal-clear, auspicious light fell from the peach tree, bathing Ahu's figure in it. Chapter 1807. Wisps of bright light fell down and bathed Ahu's graceful figure in it, making her look holy and pure. Lin Sun's pupil shrank. He suddenly raised his head and looked carefully. Soon, he locked onto the source of this ray of light. It was a peach as white as jade, as big as a fist. It was hidden in the branches and leaves, with wisps of strong divine brilliance flowing down its translucent surface. Looking at Ahu, she stood there with her eyes closed. Her breath was faintly discernible like an old monk in meditation, just like the blue-robed man with the ancient sword on his back and others. Lin Sun frowned. He looked at Ahu and then at the wooden tablet next to her. Life is like a dream. How many springs and autumns do people live? He was sure that if he recited these words like Ahu did, it would surely cause such a strange and unusual event to occur. However, was this change good or bad? Lin Sun looked at the bottom of the tree. Under the rolling mist, there were piles of white bones and corpses. Had these corpses experienced such a change before they were alive? Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that a figure standing not far away suddenly let out a burst of joyful laughter. He looked like a teenager, with white hair and a bun on his head. Even when he laughed, his eyes were closed tightly, like the laughter of an idiot in a dream. Boom! The next moment, the body of the man in linen seemed to be on fire, but he seemed to be unaware of it. His face was full of calmness, joy, and a smile that seemed to see through everything. Taoism Pier. Lin Sun shouted. He had seen that this man was showing signs of Qigong deviation, and his cultivation would be completely incinerated. But the man in linen didn't notice it at all. His flesh and blood began to turn into flying ashes inch by inch. This strange and horrible scene made Lin Sun's heart turn cold. He didn't hesitate to make a move to warn the man. However, his palm was dissolved by an invisible force near the peach tree before it could get close to the man. In the end, under Lin Sun's shocked gaze, the white-haired man in linen turned into a corpse and lay on the ground. Just like that, he died silently with a smile on his face. Lin Sun's expression flickered. He looked up at the top of the peach tree, where there was a fresh and translucent peach that was as red as the sunset. The strands of divine radiance that descended onto the white-haired man earlier had come from such an immortal peach. Could it be that the hidden danger here is really on the peaches on the tree? Lin Sun's expression was extremely solemn. He had never seen such a strange thing before. What worried him the most was that Ahu's current condition was exactly the same as the white-haired linens. Lin Sun asked Little Silver, who shook his head to show that he didn't know. He then asked Old Toad, Alu, Little Tian, and the Big Blackbird. None of them could give him an answer. The Kunlun ruins was one of the 4 great ancient gods' ruins, and there were countless secrets buried there. Since ancient times, no one had been able to see through all the secrets. What more Old Toad and the others? Originally, Lin Sun planned to ask Wu Kei, the spirit of the insignificant Bao, who was silently healing his injuries, but he suddenly thought of a person. To be precise, it was a tree. Whoosh! The next moment, the divine alchemy ancestral tree, which had traveled with the sky-splitting emperor, turned into a green glow and was released by Lin Sun. Peach tree of immortality. As soon as it appeared, it screamed excitedly. Ha! This must be the Kunlun ruins. Only the Kunlun ruins can give birth to such a wonderful thing. Lin Sun's eyes lit up. This old tree obviously knew something. It made sense. This guy was the divine alchemy ancestral tree, which could be classified as divine trees, with the peach tree of immortality. In other words, they were the same kind. Can you see the danger here? Lin Sun asked. The divine alchemy ancestral tree calmed down from its frenzy. It looked at the peach tree of immortality, then at Ahu and the man and woman in the distance. I once heard from the sky-splitting emperor that the peach of immortality is also known as the big dream Dao fruit. If you want to swallow this fruit, you must go through a trial in the dream. If you're not strong enough, you will harm yourself in the trial. Some people will fall into a dream and think that they have seen through the mysteries of the great Tao. They will lose their Tao heart and die from chi deviation. If I'm not wrong, then the corpses at the bottom of the immortality peach tree were probably tempered by the dream and were unable to free themselves from it. So they perished. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed when he heard the words of the divine alchemy ancestral tree. He believed most of it because he had just seen how the white-haired man in linen clothes suffered. Doesn't that mean Ahu is in danger too? Lin Sun's heart tightened. No, that will depend on her fortune. If she can pass the trial in the dream, she will be able to obtain a supreme fortune. The divine alchemy ancestral tree said. Lin Sun frowned and said, but it is still too dangerous. Is there no other way to obtain the fortune? I don't know about that. The divine alchemy ancestral tree shook its head. Lin Sun was a little disappointed and put the divine alchemy ancestral tree away. Before the old tree left, it still said, little friend, don't forget about the five-colored soil. It is even more precious than the peach of immortality, the five-colored soil. With a thought, Lin Sun spread his spiritual awareness and looked down from the sky. He immediately noticed that this vast plain was colorful and filled with 5 kinds of light and shadow: green, gold, black, red, and white. Could it be that the 5-colored soil was really growing under the ground? As soon as he thought of this, Lin Sun suddenly noticed that Ahu was struggling, as if she was fighting against some extremely terrible force and trying to wake up. But no matter how hard she tried, it was of no use. On the contrary, as she struggled and resisted, the essence, energy, and spirit in her entire body started to become chaotic, and she faintly showed signs of burning. Oh no! Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank. Just now, the white-haired man in linen clothes suffered chi deviation in this state. His body was burned, and he finally died. Oh, you must hold on. I'm coming to save you. Lin Sun shouted and operated the secret of Pusho's roar. His voice surged like thunder. He was anxious, but there was nothing he could do to save Ahu. The feeling of powerlessness and anxiety made Lin Sun unable to calm down. Inexplicable anger surged in his heart. Swish! In the end, Lin Sun stared at the peach tree angrily. He was absolutely unable to tolerate Ahu suffering just like that, because he owed Ahu too much in these past few years. I'll destroy this stupid tree. Lin Sun gritted his teeth and suddenly stepped into the air. His eyes were like lightning, locking on a peach condensed on the peach tree. The peach was as white as jade. The divine light flowing out of it fell down and enveloped Ahu's figure. It could be said that it was the culprit. In order to save Ahu, he didn't care about anything else and went all out. Lin Sun's eyes were cold. The aura around him ran like a landslide and a tsunami, and he suddenly punched with all his strength. Boom! The world trembled. The horrible fist force containing Lin Sun's anger roared out, condensed and powerful to the extreme. The fist of shaking heaven. This punch, which could easily kill Emptiness Saint, just made the peach tree tremble and then was dissolved by the rolling divine light. This tree was too extraordinary. It was like the backbone of the world. Its crown was like an umbrella that covered the sky and the sun, and it flowed with a rain of divine light. Ahu's pretty face gradually turned pale. Her face was full of struggle and discomfort. She seemed to be enduring great pain, and her body was trembling slightly. Her chi became more and more chaotic. Ahu, you must hold on. Lin Sun took a deep breath. All the strength in his body was deduced to the extreme. His whole body was like a furnace that was burning. His black hair fluttered in the wind. The depression, anxiety, worry, and anger in his chest were all vented in his actions. Boom! He let out a long roar. The fist force was like a dragon, and it struck out violently one after another, causing the nearby void to explode and become chaotic. Whoosh, the branches and leaves of the immortality peach tree swayed about, and a beautiful rain of light flowed about. It dispersed all of these attacks, and they couldn't approach at all. It was like an unshakable god. Lin Sun's current combat strength could kill top great sages like Yin, Chunjun, and Luong. But now he seemed so powerless. It was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Open up. However, Lin Sun didn't give up. His eyes were red, and he seemed like an ancient demon god that had fallen into a frenzy. A huge abyss appeared around him, causing heaven and earth to change color. Heaven-shaking punch, 9 transformations of Calamity Dragon, Taishian Sword Scripture, Void-breaking Finger of Dian, First Cut of Heaven. Lin Sun released all kinds of martial arts secret techniques to the extreme. All these years, he had rarely been so angry, crazy, and desperate as he was at this moment. He couldn't forget that it was Ahu who helped him escape from the Soul Oblivion Sea and gave him the vast universe Arkansas. He couldn't forget that Ahu had guided him to the flying immortal token and brought him to Kunlun ruins. They had fought side by side all the way, killed enemies together, and overcome difficulties together. However, Lin Sun knew very well that if it wasn't for Ahu's guidance and help, it would have been impossible for him to arrive here so smoothly. He owed Ahu too much, or perhaps he didn't know when it started, but he had long regarded Ahu as a best friend who had gone through thick and thin with him. Now that Ahu was about to suffer and her life was in danger, how could Lin Sun endure it? Kill! In the void, Lin Sun roared wildly. Even though it was like an ant trying to shake a tree or a moth flying into a fire, he didn't stop or retreat. Rumble. The void here was surging and rumbling. In the end, Lin Sun released the Broken Sword, Avicii Sword, Yuan Killer Sword, Endless Way Tower, Infinite Way Bottle, Insignificant Bow, and other treasures. But in the end, it was still in vain. The power released by the immortality peach tree was like the supreme rule, turning into an unshakable barrier. No matter how Lin Sun attacked, it didn't move at all. Kill. However, Lin Sun didn't seem to notice it at all. His fighting spirit, hatred, and anger overlapped in his heart like an erupting volcano, attacking again and again. He was as stubborn as a stone and as ruthless as the wind. A single person was fighting against a legendary divine tree. He seemed so small, but he was so desperate. After an unknown period of time, Lin Sun's consciousness gradually began to blur. The battle with all his strength had caused his physical strength to be on the verge of exhaustion. Unprecedented exhaustion hit him like a tide, making his body feel numb. However, he was still fighting. Kill! 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 Lin Sun's furious and crazy roar echoed in this world, surging in all directions. Chapter 1808. It was the first time that Lin Sun had been so angry since he stepped into the Great Sage Realm. It was also the first time that he had released his full strength. His body was numb under the unprecedented exhaustion, but his fighting spirit was still so violent and blazing. The unyielding and stubborn figure was attacking crazily between heaven and earth, as if he would not stop until the last drop of strength. The peach tree was flowing with magnificent divine light, which seemed so merciless that it blocked everything. Until Lin Sun's consciousness became muddled, a sigh suddenly sounded in his heart. I thought, he came again, but you're not him after all. The voice was filled with lingering disappointment. Lin Sun raised his head with a blank look in his eyes. Who? Immediately, his pupils contracted little by little, and the confusion in his eyes dissipated like fog. His muddled consciousness also recovered a trace of clarity. Only now did he notice that a wisp of a violet-colored beautiful figure had suddenly appeared on the immortality peach tree, and it was faintly visible amidst the dazzling divine radiance. It was like a wisp of violet light that was indistinct in the horizon. Did you do that to save her? The soft voice sounded in his heart again. Lin Sun nodded. Of course. You don't want to live anymore? The purple figure asked again. Lin Sun said no. How could he think about anything else when he was saving someone? No wonder both of you are so stubborn, even though you've obtained the same inheritance as him. Both of you would rather fight with your life on the line than take a step back. The purple figure sighed softly. Who was he? Lin Sun couldn't figure it out, and he didn't want to think about it. A long time ago, there was a guy who was much more powerful than you. He barged into this place and cut down the immortality peach tree without any regard for anything else. He took away all the fruits of the tree. He said that he had to bring such delicious peaches back to the sect and let his fellow disciples have a taste. The purple figure's voice was filled with reminiscence and a hint of a smile. However, in the end, he was still unable to do as he wished. That's because this is the only immortality peach tree in the world. How could someone like him, who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, possibly touch it? Later on, before he left, he said that he would definitely come back in the future to chop down the immortality peach tree that had been bothering him and use it as firewood. Only then would he feel satisfied. What happened later? Lin Sun asked. Then, the violet figure fell silent for a long time before he sighed lightly. I've been waiting for him to return until I met you. I suddenly realized that he might never return. The immortal peach tree was still there. It had not been chopped into firewood and burned. Of course, he had never returned. Something to do with me? Lin Sun frowned. Nothing to do with it. The purple figure said, I only know that a long time ago, there was only one person in his sect who mastered the battle saint technique. Her voice became low, but people like him would never accept disciples. Boom! Lin Sun felt as if his head had been struck by lightning, and an unruly figure, like the dominator of war, emerged in his mind. He had once swept through the 9 heavens, slaughtered his way into the clouds, looked down upon arrogance, and shook the ages. So it's him. Lin Sun understood, and there was a trace of trance in his eyes. Senior Xian Kong of Mount Fongsuan had once said that among the dozens of senior and junior brothers in the sect, only one had ever mastered the battle saint technique. Unless he encountered a great calamity or knew that a great calamity was about to befall him, he wouldn't leave such an inheritance behind. The purple figure's voice was a little sad and low. Lin Sun suddenly said, That's not necessarily the case. He left the inheritance just to make the Tao fire last forever. How could he infer a matter of life and death? The purple figure was stunned and fell into silence. Lin Sun turned his eyes to the peach tree. There, the beautiful figure of who was still there. Although her pretty face was pale and her eyes were closed, her chi had become stable. Lin Sun let out a long sigh of relief. When he relaxed his mind, he felt waves of tide-like tiredness and sleepiness. His body was sore and swollen, and there was a feeling of exhaustion both inside and outside his body. The desperate attack just now had consumed too much of his energy. Then, I'll wait a little longer. After a long time, the purple figure seemed to have figured it out, and said with a hint of joy and relaxation in her voice, Anyway, I'll wait for him to come back. My young friend, you can pick as many as 9 peaches of immortality here. If you pick too many, you'll be contaminated with karma. At that time, he didn't care about karma at all. Remember, you can only take 1 peach of immortality. Taking more is useless for your cultivation. If you have a chance to see him in the future, remember to tell him not to forget what he said at that time. Well, that's it. Then, the purple figure disappeared. Like a rain of light, it disappeared from the immortality peach tree. Lin Sun was stunned. At that moment, he suddenly discovered that the Tao glow flowing down from the peach tree had disappeared too. The invisible force of the rules had disappeared. Lin Sun tried to approach it, and, as expected, there was no obstacle. Although he was extremely tired at the moment, Lin Sun still tried his best to jump on the legendary peach tree. Numerous peaches of immortality that were dazzling like the sun could be seen amidst the verdant and translucent emerald leaves and branches in the surroundings. Some were as red as sunset, some as white as jade, some as blue as glaze, and some were flowing with purple clouds. There were a lot of them. Thank you, Senior. Lin Sun took a deep breath and saluted. However, no one responded, as if the purple figure really didn't exist. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun picked a peach of immortality that was as white as jade. At the same time, under the peach tree, Ahu, who had closed her eyes in a pale face, fell to the ground as if she had lost her support. Then, her eyelashes trembled, and she slowly opened her eyes as if she had just woken up from a dream. After a while, Ahu realized something. She patted her chest with lingering fear and let out a long breath. Ahu, you're awake. A laugh sounded. Ahu raised her head and looked at the peach tree with her limpid eyes. She saw Lin Sun standing on a branch. She opened her beautiful eyes wide in surprise. How did you? I'll explain it to you later. Take it first. Lin Sun smiled as he passed the peach of immortality that resembled green jade to Ahu. Quickly refine it. Otherwise, your strength will dissipate. Biting her lips, Ahu stared at the peach in her hand in a daze. She was so smart that she had vaguely guessed something. After a while, she smiled happily and waved her hand. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Her voice was clear and melodious like the sound of nature. Lin Sun smiled as well. At this moment, his entire body was relaxed, and there were no more obstacles in his heart. Then, Lin Sun stood on the peach tree and looked around carefully. The immortality peach tree was too huge. Its branches were dense and thick like numerous wriggling flood dragons. Moreover, the number of immortality peaches condensed on its branches was dazzling. Lin Sun picked 8 peaches of different colors and sizes according to his intuition. He didn't know whether they had different magical effects or not. At this point, Lin Sun jumped off the peach tree and didn't look at the peaches hanging on the branch again. It seemed that he was very decisive. Such supreme fortune was indeed sufficient to make any cultivator go mad with lust. But Lin Sun was very clear that the purple-robed woman wouldn't do it without a reason. It was better for him to stop in time. He didn't want to be involved in any karma because of picking peaches of immortality. At the top of the peach tree that Lin Sun didn't notice, a purple-robed figure was sitting in the clouds with a touch of gratification in her eyes. This was a young man who knew when to stop. If it was that unruly guy, he definitely wouldn't stop. Thinking of this, she couldn't help feeling disappointed. Ahu was practicing and meditating under the peach tree. Lin Sun looked not far away and saw 2 figures standing there. One was a blue-robed man with an ancient sword on his back, and the other was a woman in a phoenix robe with her long hair tied up in a bun. Lin Sun was not a good person. Not to mention that the 2 of them hadn't revealed the slightest sign of danger up until now. Perhaps they would even be able to overcome the tempering of the dream realm and obtain a supreme fortune. Lin Sun naturally couldn't stop all this. Otherwise, once they woke up and found that the 2 peaches they wanted were picked by Lin Sun, they would definitely cause unnecessary trouble. Silver, come and protect me. Lin Sun took a deep breath and decided to recover his strength first before thinking about refining the peaches of immortality. The reason was that he didn't know when the blue-robed man and the woman in the phoenix robe would wake up. Whoosh! Silver rushed out and began to protect them. Lin Sun took out some magic herbs and began to meditate. The peach tree stood silently, its branches and leaves glowing with divine light. The invisible power of rules reappeared. Time flowed by, and before he knew it, 5 days had passed. Whoosh! Lin Sun woke up from meditation, full of vigor and light in his eyes. This world was flowing with rich divine vitality, and the aura of the Great Way was amazing. Lin Sun's cultivation had improved a lot even though he had only meditated for 5 days. If I can meditate here for a while, I'm afraid I can improve to the middle level of the great sage realm even without the help of the peaches of immortality. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. He looked to the side and found that Ahu was still practicing and showed no sign of waking up. Not far away, the blue-robed man and the woman in the phoenix robe were also standing there like clay statues. Silver, this peach is for you. Lin Sun took out a peach and handed it to Silver, who had been guarding him. But at this moment, something strange happened. Whoosh! A beam of dazzling sword chi suddenly came to Lin Sun and chopped towards him. This sudden scene was enough to catch anyone unprepared. It was too fast, and the sword chi was too fierce and terrible. Even Lin Sun had no time to dodge, so he had to face it head-on. Boom! Even though he managed to block the sword strike in the end, he was still sent flying. He was in a sorry state. His expression turned cold as he looked over. The blue-robed man with the ancient sword on his back had turned around. His eyes were full of fierceness and a touch of unconcealable passion and greed. "Hand over the peach in your hand, and I'll spare your life," he said in an indisputable tone. Chapter 1809. His voice was solemn. Lin Sun said, "Oh," and threw the peach into the air. Whoosh! The blue-robed man moved in the air and grabbed the peach at an incredible speed. Only, what was even faster than him was a broken blade. It was sparkling white like snow as it suddenly arrived. The first cut of Tian Yuan. And Lin Sun didn't hold back. Because he was still meditating, Lin Sun didn't dare to hide anything at this critical moment. Clang! A deafening collision rang out. The blue-robed man used his sword to block the slash, but his figure was also shaken and sent flying backward. His face changed slightly. It seemed that he didn't expect that Lin Sun's combat power would be so strong. This was beyond his expectation. When did another great sage appear on the starry sky, ancient road? Boom! But Lin Sun didn't talk nonsense at all. He rushed to the blue-robed man with his shining body and matchless bravery. He didn't intend to give the blue-robed man a chance to dodge. In an instant, the two collided dozens of times. The ancient sword clanged, and the broken sword shot. They fought with each other, tearing the void apart and collapsing. Puff! After a while, the blue-robed man coughed up blood, and a touch of horror appeared on his face. "Who are you?" He was completely shocked. With his combat power, he could be regarded as a top existence in the great sage realm, which was enough to disdain many of his peers. But now he was injured. Lin Sun didn't say a word. He went all out and looked extremely arrogant and domineering, with amazing killing intent. In fact, he was also quite surprised. It should be known that his cultivation had been improved again, and with the power of the broken sword, his combat power could be improved by about 10%. But under such circumstances, he couldn't kill the opponent immediately. It could be imagined that the opponent was also destined to be a tyrannical figure. "You're courting death." The blue-robed man, who was completely suppressed, looked gloomy and furious. With a clatter, a soft whip wrapped with purple thunder and lightning appeared in his palm. It was as long as 10 meters. He shook in the void and threw it out fiercely. Crack! The void was smashed like a piece of paper, and the terrible purple thunder and lightning flowed. With a bang, Lin Sun's broken sword was whipped away. This soft whip of thunder and lightning was obviously not comparable to ordinary holy treasures. It was full of horrible, destructive breath. It looked soft, but in fact, it was extremely strong and fierce. Crack! Crack! Pa! The blue-clothed man seemed as if he was venting his rage after his attack succeeded, and he swung his whip to attack. He pointed at the heavens and smashed the earth, and he gave rise to a myriad of whip images while surging violet-colored thunderstorms swept out like a torrent. Lin Sun summoned the Tower of Endless Tao without hesitation. The body of the pagoda that seemed to be constructed from divine gold and glass emanated rays of dark golden light that enveloped the world and suppressed the surroundings. Along with an earth-shattering collision sound, the blue-clothed man's attack was completely suppressed. The purple lightning whip in his hand was extremely profound, but it was completely insufficient before the power of the great Tao bottomless tower. This caused the blue-robed man's expression to change completely. Even the purple Een Thunder Whip couldn't do it. He found it hard to believe. It should be known that the purple Een Thunder Whip was a world-shaking secret treasure. It was also his greatest trump card. With this treasure, he dared to challenge a king saint. But now, it was firmly suppressed by a pagoda. Not long after, the blue-clothed man who had been suppressed once more couldn't hold on any longer. He coughed up blood once more, and he retreated without hesitation, planning to escape. But at this moment, Lin Sun suddenly rushed forward, the infinite great wave bottle in his palm glowing. Boom! The vast sea of sword chi derived from the 33 swords surged out overwhelmingly, drowning the blue-clothed man. But this man's strength was still beyond Lin Sun's expectation. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The blue-clothed man suddenly let out a roar. Above his head, a white bone hand was condensed, crystal like jade, and its 5 fingers were branded with strange fluctuations of the Great Way. As the white bone hand slapped out, boom! The dense sea of sword chi exploded with a loud bang, transforming into a rolling rain of light that scattered down. The terrible power made Lin Sun's black eyes narrow. This was a bone hand with the breath of the Emperor Tao, full of supreme power. The blue-clothed man took this opportunity to escape, but his body had been torn by the sword chi, riddled with holes and bloody, extremely miserable. He let out a shrill roar like a ghost, hideous and terrible. I want you to die. He had never suffered such a big loss since he started his cultivation, nor had he been killed to such an extent, which made him completely furious. Boom! The white bone hand swept up, shining with obscure light. Just its breath made Lin Sun's body stiff and his soul oppressed. However, as the tower of endless way sprinkled with black golden light, the terrible and oppressive breath was also washed away. Up! Lin Sun shouted, and the killing intent in his eyes became more and more intense. The tower of endless way exuded vast and ancient charm. With a roar in the void, it showed a great momentum that could suppress the past, the present, and the future. In front of this momentum, the white bone hand was severely restrained, unable to struggle, and even the breath of the Emperor Tao on the handbone was suppressed. Puff! The blue-clothed man coughed up blood again as if he had suffered a backfire. He staggered and couldn't stand still. As if he had encountered the most incredible thing in the world, he roared angrily, "It's impossible. How could the hand bone of the evil emperor be suppressed?" Lin Sun didn't care about this. With a wave of his hand, his figure moved, and the broken sword swept up a terrible snow-white torrent and violently chopped down. Puff! The blue-clothed man's body was split open, and blood splashed out like a waterfall. Even at the moment of his death, he still couldn't believe it. It seemed that from the beginning, he had never thought that he would die in the hands of a stranger he had never heard of in front of the peach tree. With a clang, Lin Sun put away the broken sword. Bang! Without the blue-clothed man's control, the white bone hand strangely cracked and exploded, turning into white powder and fluttering in the air. Lin Sun was stunned. How could such a treasure imprinted with the breath of the Emperor Tao just disappear like this? Obviously, the destruction of the treasure had something to do with the death of the blue-clothed man, but Lin Sun didn't bother to guess the reason. He looked at Ahu, who was not far away, and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that she was not disturbed. Then, he looked at the woman in the phoenix robe in the distance. Before Lin Sun said anything, the woman in the phoenix robe had already turned around. She had a pure and white face, with a unique, dignified, and calm aura. She was very tall, dressed in a scarlet phoenix robe, and her black hair was tied up in a bun. She was extremely beautiful. She looked at Lin Sun with a pair of bright and narrow phoenix eyes and praised, "My friend, you've killed Tu Qingxiong, who ranked 27th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list, in less than a quarter of an hour. If such an achievement is spread out, it's bound to cause a sensation in the world." Lin Sun realized that the blue-clothed man, just now, was a peerless figure ranked in the top 30 on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. No wonder his battle prowess was so extraordinary. He was indeed much stronger than Yin Chunjun and Luong. "My friend, don't you know Tu Qingxiong? He is a direct descendant of the Blackwater battle clan, one of the top 10 battle clans. His ancestor is the evil Emperor Xuanlu, who was famous in the ancient times." The eyes of the woman in the phoenix robe were shining brilliantly, as if they could see through people's hearts. But Lin Sun looked calm and unperturbed, which made her unable to see any emotional fluctuations. This surprised her a little. Didn't this man know the terrible consequences of killing Tu Qingxiong? He would be regarded as a thorn in the flesh by the Blackwater Battle Clan and must be eradicated. Unfortunately, she didn't know that Lin Sun was not a practitioner on the Starry Sky Ancient Path at all. Come to think of it, even if Lin Sun knew it, he would not show any mercy when he killed Tu Qingxiong. It was like this before, and it would be like this in the future. Lin Sun said, "What about you? Who are you?" The woman in the phoenix robe was stunned. She seemed to have guessed something and suddenly said, "It seems that you should come from the 9 regions. This is really unbelievable." Lin Sun didn't deny it. This surprised the woman in the phoenix robe. When did such a ruthless character emerge in the 9 regions? She calmed down and said, "My name is Chunyu Ge, and I come from the Emperor Clan Chunyu." The Emperor Clan Chunyu? Lin Sun was unfamiliar with it. He had never heard of it, and he didn't even know how many Emperor clans there were on the Starry Sky Ancient Path. Not to mention who this Chunyu Ge was. Seeing Lin Sun's calm reaction, Chunyu Ge felt a little absent-minded. In the past, when cultivators of the same generation saw her, which one of them did not feel nervous and admire her? From this, she was even more certain that the young man in front of her was definitely not from the Starry Sky Ancient Path. "It seems that all the peaches of immortality here have been obtained by you." Chunyu Ji's eyes were a little complicated. She knew very well that the chances of obtaining the peaches of immortality were limited. When someone obtained them in advance, others would end up with nothing even if they went through dreams. It was the same for Tu Qingxiong and her. Lin Sun still did not deny it. He just looked at Chunyu Ge quietly. "Forget it. If I stay any longer, I will definitely arouse your hatred and conflict. Since that's the case, I might as well leave now." Chunyu Ge also noticed that Lin Sun's attitude towards her was very stiff. Thinking of the scene where Tu Qingxiong was killed, she finally decided to leave. Before leaving, she couldn't help but ask, "My friend, may I know your name?" "Lin Sun." Lin Sun told her his name. Chunyu Ge muttered to herself. Then she smiled sweetly and said, "I believe that I will still have a chance to meet you in the Kunlun ruins. Goodbye." After saying that, she floated away. She did not look back, nor did she show any hesitation. She just left casually. It was as if losing a supreme opportunity was nothing to her. Her state of mind was free of worries. From beginning to end, no matter what Lin Sun's attitude was, she did not show any hostility. This surprised Lin Sun. She gave up just like that. After watching Chunyu Ji's figure disappear and sensing that even her aura had disappeared from the Peach Garden secret realm, Lin Sun finally confirmed that she had really given up. "This is a woman who doesn't show her strength, and I can't see through her," Lin Sun judged. Chapter 1810. Under the peach tree, the peace and tranquility of the past were restored. Lin Sun counted the spoils. As a peerless saint ranked 27th on the Starry Sky Great Saint list, Tu Qingxiong was quite rich. An ancient treasure called Purple Thunder Whip, which had been passed down for a long time, was so powerful that even the broken blade couldn't resist its whip. It could be imagined how extraordinary it was. It was a dark green ancient sword with 19 life inscriptions carved on it. It was obviously Tu Qingxiong's life saint weapon. However, such a life-bonded treasure was of little value in the eyes of other practitioners. It was thrown into the insignificance bowl by Lin Sun casually as the ration for the spirit to restore his own vitality. In addition, Tu Qingxiong also carried a lot of magic medicines and treasures, all of which were first class in the world. Lin Sun took all of them for his own use. After doing all this, Lin Sun sat cross-legged and took out a peach of immortality. It was as red as the sunset, crystal clear, flowing with a magnificent rain of light and refreshing fragrance. As soon as he swallowed it, a strange hot current spread all over his body. Lin Sun only felt that his soul was suddenly enlightened, and he was about to become an immortal. The power of the peach of immortality was too miraculous, and it was different from divine medicines. It allowed the body and mind of a cultivator to harmonize with the Tao and feel enlightened. Soon, Lin Sun was immersed in a deep level of enlightenment. He sat cross-legged on the ground with a solemn and ethereal look. Every inch of his body was surging with dazzling light of Tao. As he breathed in and out, all kinds of wonderful visions emerged behind his head. There were real dragons roaming, yin and yang, water and fire. There were Tai Chi rotating and big abyss swallowing and spitting. There were also undying ripples that rumbled endlessly. These were all the powers of Tao that Lin Sun had mastered. Later, Lin Sun's essence, Qi and spirit were roaring like a volcanic eruption, and his internal organs produced a wonderful rhythm, clanging like gold and jade. Looking from a distance, his figure was like a furnace of heaven and earth, vast and boundless, boiling and operating, containing all the mysteries of Tao and developing all the mysteries. Only a few hours later, with the earth-shattering roar, the whole world was shaking. Divine vitality surged from all directions and poured into Lin Sun's body continuously. His body was like a bottomless abyss, crazily and greedily swallowing and refining. This scene was very shocking. Looking down from the sky, the peach blossom forest all over the secret realm of Peach was swaying and emitting divine vitality, all rushing to the place where Lin Sun was. If it was any other cultivator in Chen Shi's place, that cultivator would be utterly unable to endure such powerful and surging energy, let alone refine and absorb it. But Lin Sun didn't notice it at all. His figure was like a furnace that embraced the power of all directions, and there was nothing that he couldn't contain and nothing that he couldn't refine. The most miraculous part was that a completely different scene appeared in Lin Sun's heart. Numerous unbelievable profundities of the Grand Tao surged into appearance, and it caused him to fall into a deep level of comprehension. It was mysterious and indescribable. In just 2 days, boom, Lin Sun's boiling qi suddenly broke through at this moment, as if he had broken a natural moat barrier and entered the middle realm of the great sage. His whole body shone brightly, and his qi surged like smoke, rising up, shattering the clouds in all directions and shaking the stars in the sky. And all this was not over. The magical power brought by the power of the peach of immortality kept Lin Sun still immersed in that strange state of comprehension. It was not only the improvement of his cultivation, but also his comprehension of the Grand Tao, his understanding of his own Dharma, and his comprehension of the endless devouring scripture. All of them also rose along with it. 3 days later, a furnace that seemed to be solid appeared above Lin Sun's head. The surface of the furnace was branded with all kinds of wonderful Dharma. There was Taishian Sword Sutra deducing the sword Qi, covering all directions. There was a divine man waving his fists, shaking the heaven and earth. There was a real dragon roaring and transforming into 9 changes. There was a boundless finger power, expounding the mystery of space. The furnace seethed and glowed, and every single one of the Tao techniques within it revealed an obvious transformation. The first transformation was Taishian Sword Qi. The 33 layers of Sword Qi evolved into 72 mountains of Sword Qi, each of which was formed by the accumulation of 3,800 Taishian Sword Qi. There were 72 earthly evil spirits, so it was called Earthly Evil Sword Mountain. Then, the mystery of the fist of shaking the sky was completely melted and turned into a kind of mystery of the Great Way Furnace Scripture. At this point, when Lin Sun ran the Great Way Furnace Scripture, its power had the momentum of shaking the heaven and earth. Then, the 9 changes of the real dragon transformed into the symbol of tribulation, which was branded on the Furnace Scripture. Like the fist of shaking the sky, its mystery was integrated into the Great Way Furnace Scripture, which added a kind of change. What was change? Like a dragon, it could be big or small, it could rise or hide. When it was big, it could make clouds and fog. When it was small, it could hide. When it was small, it could hide. When it rose, it could roam all the heavens, and when it hid, it could lurk in the abyss. The 9 changes of the real dragon was originally the forbidden secret of the real dragon. Now, Lin Sun integrated all its mystery into his own cultivation method, just like the fist of shaking the sky. Later, the mystery of the first cut of Tianyuan was also melted, which added a kind of sharpness to the Great Way Furnace scripture. It was incomparably fierce and invincible. When Lin Sun ran the Great Way Furnace scripture and controlled the broken blade to perform the first cut of Tianyuan, he could integrate the mystery of the real dragon's change and the momentum of shaking the heaven and earth at will. Naturally, its power was much more powerful than before. But in the end, Lin Sun failed to integrate the mystery of the void-breaking finger of Dian and the Taishian sword scripture into his own cultivation method. The Taishian sword scripture was very special. This cultivation method was left by the first sword emperor in primitive times. It was the real sword scripture of Emperor Path, a supreme method. If Lin Sun wanted to integrate it into his own cultivation method, he would have to reach the Emperor realm. The void-breaking finger of Dian seemed to have only 3 moves, but it involved the extremely mysterious and obscure power of the law of space. For Lin Sun now, he still couldn't understand its mystery. But even so, after this transformation, the Great Way Furnace scripture had been further perfected, and the mystery and power it contained were at least twice as strong as before. Moreover, as Lin Sun integrated more cultivation methods in the future, the power and mystery of the Great Way Furnace scripture would be stronger. This was Lin Sun's own cultivation method. From the moment it was created, it was destined to be the only cultivation method in the whole world. 7 days later, Lin Sun woke up from a deep level of enlightenment. His eyes were clear and clean, like the clearest spring water in the world, but they could reflect the sky and see through all things. Tao runes flowed around him, making him free from dust and dirt, ethereal and transcendent. From the appearance alone, it was difficult for anyone to see through him unless he had a realm and power far beyond Lin Sun's. This was called the body is like an abyss, and the momentum is empty, hiding the elephant in the invisible. Lin Sun's mind was clear and unprecedentedly clear. In an instant, he sensed the various transformations of his own strength. In terms of cultivation, he had reached the peak of the middle stage of the great sage realm. He had integrated spirit, chi, and body refining into one furnace. In terms of enlightenment, all the power of the Great Way had been condensed into the Great Sage Law and further tempered, becoming more and more vigorous and pure. What was different from the past was that his understanding of the mystery of space had been promoted from the initial level to the entry level. In the cultivation of martial arts, there were also various transformations. Feeling the series of changes in his mind, Lin Sun sighed, as if he had not fully understood it yet. For others, a peach of immortality can be equivalent to 100 years of hard work, but for me, it can only be equivalent to 10 years of hard work at most. Lin Sun also knew that this was probably because his cultivation foundation was too strong. Of course, 100 years of hard work for ordinary people was different from his own. This was a relative concept. However, Lin Sun was not reconciled. In other words, it had shocked and surprised Lin Sun to be able to achieve the progress of 10 years of hard work in less than 7 days. Cultivation was never about the faster the better, but whether the foundation tempered in this realm was strong and solid in the pursuit of Tao. This was the core of cultivation, and also determined the achievements of each practitioner in the future. In fact, from the beginning of Lin Sun's cultivation to the present, he had set foot on the Great Sage realm in less than 100 years. This speed of cultivation could be regarded as shocking. Even on the starry ancient road, he could be regarded as a peerless genius. Of course, Lin Sun's cultivation path had never been about speed, but about being invincible and unparalleled in the past and the present. With my current strength, it's a piece of cake for me to kill people like Yin Chunjun. There was a touch of confidence in Lin Sun's black eyes. This was an invincible and disdainful demeanor. Now, he just wanted to have a try to see how many moves Sha Luqing could resist. Congratulations, Brother Lin. You have made a further progress in Tao. A clear and melodious voice sounded beside him. Ahu, dressed in a yellow dress, looked at Lin Sun with a smile. At this moment, Her eyes were watery, her lips were moist, her skin was jade white, her figure was graceful, and she glowed with a shocking expression. Every frown and smile of hers carried the grace to charm all living beings and overturn the world. When she didn't smile, she was like a fairy. The two temperaments blended together, producing a kind of beauty that made the world dim. Same to you. Lin Sun smiled. He had seen that Ahu's strength had undergone an amazing transformation after swallowing a peach. Both of them couldn't help laughing. This trip to the secret realm of Peachland had made them quite amazing gains. Now it was time to leave. After a short talk, they decided to set off immediately. The secret realm of Peachland was just one of the many places of opportunity in the Kunlun ruins, so they would not spend all their time here. Before leaving, Lin Sun suddenly remembered something. He immediately took out a spear and stabbed it into the ground under his feet. Clang! Unexpectedly, the ground was extremely hard, comparable to the hardest divine iron in the world. It made Lin Sun's thumb and forefinger numb, and the spear in his hand buzzed incessantly. What are you going to do? Ahu was stunned. Dig some 5-colored wonderful soil and take it back to plant trees. Lin Sun said casually. He frowned a little because he didn't expect the ground to be so hard. After thinking about it, Lin Sun tried several times, but he failed. The hardness of the soil here made him feel incredible. Chapter 18:11. He wanted to cut down the peach tree for firewood, and now you want to take away the 5-colored wonderful soil to plant a tree. Are all the successors of Mind Mountain so unreasonable? There was a hint of helplessness and a hint of a smile in his voice, as if he felt that Lin Sun's action was quite similar to that person's. Lin Sun was embarrassed. He didn't expect that the purple figure didn't disappear completely, but had seen his every move. Take it. The next moment, a piece of soil the size of a cattail leaf fan swept out from the ground. It was suffused with green, gold, white, red, and black divine brilliance. Visible divine vitality fell down like rolling mist. It was extremely magical. Thank you, Senior. Lin Sun was overjoyed. He quickly took over the Fusang divine tree, which had shrunk countless times and was now only the size of a palm, and planted it neatly. Whoosh, the fiery red leaves of the Fusang immortal tree rolled with joy and excitement, radiating unprecedented spirituality. Lin Sun carefully put away the Fusang immortal tree and the 5-colored wonderful soil. Then he bowed slightly to the peach tree and left with Ahu. Someone seemed to be chatting with you just now? Yes, a senior with a very mysterious background. He has some connections with a senior brother in Mount Innerheart. I see. No wonder you can climb up the peach tree. Climb? You mean I'm like a monkey? Haha, you said it yourself. As they talked, they walked side by side through the peach forest that covered the mountains and fields, and their figures gradually faded away. At the top of the peach tree, amidst the sea of clouds, the purple figure quietly watched the two young people leave like a wisp of rosy cloud. He has mastered the Tower of Endless Tao and inherited the fighting saint method you left, but he doesn't even know who I am. But I know that he is your little junior brother. One day, he will definitely be like you, stepping on the spirit cloud continent and shaking the heavens. The purple figure couldn't help but smile when she thought of this. Before leaving the secret realm of Peach Garden, Ahu suddenly stopped and said, "Don't be so reckless in the future." Then, she winked at Lin Sun mischievously and walked into the door that led to the outside world. Her yellow dress fluttered in the wind, graceful and ethereal, just like her. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment. Then he shook his head with a smile and stepped into the door. Accompanied by a strange rumble, the Peach Blossom mystic realm fell silent. Lin Sun and the others had only been in the Peach Garden secret land for slightly more than 10 days, but too many turbulent and bloody things had happened in the Kunlun ruins. As one of the 4 great divine ruins of the ancient era, there were countless fortuitous encounters hidden within the Kunlun ruins. In the past few days, bloody conflicts had occurred almost constantly in the vicinity of some of the fortuitous encounters. Countless experts had fallen and died with grievances. In the end, Only a small portion of people would be able to obtain fortune. When Lin Sun and Hu walked out of the forest called Insect Nest of a Mortal Ancient, they heard a sensational rumor. A world-shocking battle has taken place on Mount Imperial Dragon. Heroes are fighting fiercely, dyeing the sky red. Rumor has it that the Imperial Dragon Mountain is one of the Kunlun ancient ruins' 9 great secret grounds. Whoever can ascend to the top will have the foundation to become a martial emperor. How terrifying! Peak great sages fell like rain on Mount Imperial Dragon. When this news came out, everyone was shocked. Like a storm, it swept through the Kunlun ancient ruins. All the cultivators who were scattered in other areas to compete for the fortuitous encounters were shocked. Then, another news came out. Someone with a flying immortal token climbed to the top of Mount Imperial Dragon and disappeared into the mysterious forbidden area. For a time, the Kunlun ancient ruins became more and more turbulent. Mount Imperial Dragon had become the focus of all the cultivators. The foundation to become a martial emperor. This kind of supreme fortune was enough to make any saint go crazy. In the outside world, it would even cause a bloody battle between the great orthodoxies. Because it was really too difficult to become a martial emperor. There might not even be a martial emperor in tens of thousands of years. If one could have the foundation to become a martial emperor, he would definitely have the opportunity to become a martial emperor in the future. It seemed to be just an opportunity, but in fact, it was because of such an opportunity that it had stopped the road of great emperor from becoming a martial emperor. For example, there were many quasi-emperors and half-step martial emperors in the world today. They had lived for countless years, but very few of them had truly stepped into the martial emperor realm. Why? Because they lacked such an opportunity. Therefore, when they found out that the fortune that appeared on Mount Imperial Dragon was related to the foundation to become a martial emperor, it was easy to imagine how great the sensation was. Both Lin Sun and Hu heard it and couldn't help but be moved. Someone climbed to the top of Mount Imperial Dragon with a flying immortal token. Could be one of Xiao Hao or Ruo Wu. Lin Sun's heart moved. Shall we go and have a look? Asked Hu. Heroes gather there, and blood flows like a river. It has long become the most eye-catching place in the Kunlun ancient ruins. If we go there now, it must be extremely dangerous. Lin Sun was a little hesitant. He was not afraid, but he thought that it was a step too late to act now. If he lost the opportunity to climb to the top of Mount Imperial Dragon, the disadvantages would outweigh the advantages. Hu said thoughtfully, "In my opinion, the commotion at Mount Imperial Dragon this time might not really have anything to do with the foundation of becoming emperor. Most of the time, what you hear is false, and what you see is true." Lin Sun was surprised. "What do you mean?" Hu said, "Mount Imperial Dragon is one of the famous 9 secrets in the Kunlun ancient ruins. In the past years, it has been explored by many strong people, but I have never heard of anyone who has built the foundation to become a martial emperor there." "You suspect it's fake news?" Lin Sun was stunned. "It's hard to say." Hu said, "Haven't you heard it? Someone with a flying immortal token has climbed to the top of Mount Imperial Dragon and entered a mysterious forbidden area." Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. Could it be that someone released the news to lure the strong people with flying immortal token to Mount Imperial Dragon? Hu was startled. Then, he said, "What you said is possible. After all, in this Kunlun realm, whoever possesses the flying immortal token is equivalent to obtaining a trump card to explore the dangerous forbidden lands. Anyone would be jealous of it." Lin Sun had a bad feeling in his heart. If what I guessed is true, the news from Mount Imperial Dragon is actually a trap to lure the people with flying immortal token to go there. Speaking of this, Lin Sun's eyes flashed with a touch of determination. "No, I have to go there myself to see if it's true." Hu frowned and said, "If it's really a trap, won't you be walking right into it?" Lin Sun shook his head. "I'm not afraid of that. I'm worried about those friends who entered the Kunlun ruins with flying immortal tokens like me. If they're attracted by the news and head to Mount Imperial Dragon to search for the fortune related to becoming an emperor, it'll be too dangerous." Hu immediately understood and said, "Then I'll go with you." "All right." The two of them immediately took action. It was easy to find out the location of Mount Imperial Dragon. Currently, the Kunlun ruins were filled with news about this place. Everyone take a look. What a divine golden-winged rock. This should be a pure-blooded rock, right? However, it was actually trampled on by Gu Tsongxin and is riddled with injuries. This is news that just came from Mount Imperial Dragon. It said that the golden-winged rock planned to secretly ascend to the top with a flying immortal token, but it was suppressed by Gu Tsongxin in one fell swoop. On the way, Lin Sun noticed a group of cultivators gathered together. One of them was holding a smooth bronze mirror and was discussing something. Golden-winged rock. Lin Sun's heart tightened. He spread out his divine consciousness and immediately noticed a scene being reflected on the bronze mirror. Gu Tsongxin, who was dressed in a black robe, stood on a rock with a cold expression. He was stepping on a golden-winged rock that was riddled with injuries. Its wings were broken and blood was flowing. Lin Sun's pupils constricted. It looked extremely similar to the young, golden-winged rock king. Is it really a trap? Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat. The young, golden-winged rock king was actually suppressed by Gu Tsongxin. What about Xiaohao, Ruo Wu, and the others? Had they encountered misfortune as well? Suddenly, Lin Sun's body trembled. He noticed a broken iron rod not far from the young golden-winged rock king. Yuan Fatian. Lin Sun remembered that the iron rod was Yuan Fatian's treasure, but it was now broken. Lin Sun clearly remembered that Yuan Fatian and the young golden-winged rock king had the best relationship. Now that one of them was suppressed and the other's weapon was broken, they must have encountered something terrifying. A touch of anxiety surged in Lin Sun's heart. He was almost sure that the so-called news on Mount Yulong must be a trap to lure those who held the flying immortal token to go there. Lin Sun couldn't wait any longer. He rushed to Mount Yulong with Ahu at full speed. In those days, the young golden-winged rock king, Yuan Fatian, Xiaohao, Ruo Wu, and the others all fought side by side with him. They fought bloody enemies on the 9-region battlefield and defended the city of Tao Protection in the ancient Desolation Realm. They drank, discussed, and laughed together. They had been friends for life and death. Now that they had encountered misfortune and been humiliated, how could Lin Sun not be anxious and angry? These bastards, do they really think that I dare not kill them? Lin Sun's black eyes were terrifyingly cold. Mount Yulong was covered with snow all year round. The mountain was very large, rising from the ground and stretching majestically. The mountain was covered with fog. In these past few days, blood had been shed here without end, and incomparably intense conflict had erupted. This was all because there was a rumor that the peak of Mount Imperial Dragon contained a supreme fortuitous encounter related to the resources of becoming an emperor. It caused a storm to gather here, and it drew the attention of countless experts. However, this mountain deserved to be the holy mountain in the Kunlun ruins. No matter how fierce the conflicts were, the mountain was as solid as iron and had never been damaged or collapsed. But most of the white snow on the mountain had been dyed red by blood. When Lin Sun and Ahu approached this area, they unexpectedly found that many practitioners turned back from the direction of Mount Yulong. Some were depressed, some looked gloomy, and some were full of resentment and hatred. Chapter 18:12. How vast and majestic was Mount Yulong? How could it be sealed so easily? Lin Sun quickly found out that the only path that could lead to the peak of Mount Yulong was sealed. This path was called the Dragon Subduing Path, and it was covered in a forbidden spatial energy. No matter what cultivation base one had, they could only climb it on foot. It was impossible to approach the peak of Mount Yulong from any other position. After understanding all of this, Lin Sun's heart sank. He could foresee that if there were a group of powerhouses with ill intentions waiting on this dragon-subduing path, like Imperial Prince Xiaohao and Ruo Wu, they would definitely be attacked at the first possible moment. Damn it, the successors of those great powers are simply too overbearing. Anyone who tries to get close will be killed. They don't intend to give anyone a chance at all. Some people were furious and complained incessantly. Haven't you heard? Only those with the flying immortal token are allowed to enter. The most important thing now is to hunt down those powerhouses from the ancient desolation domain. Only they have the flying immortal token. That's right. As long as you have the flying immortal token, not only can you enter Mount Yulong, but it won't be difficult for you to head to other forbidden places in the Kunlun ruins. Many cultivators were discussing. Lin Sun remained silent, and the aura around him became calmer. He did not attract anyone's attention as he continued forward with Ahu. After hearing the discussions of those people, he was even more certain that Mount Yulong was a tiger's den that was filled with killing intent. For example, the young golden-winged rock king and Yuan Fatian had already stepped into the great saint stage a long time ago, and their talent and strength were extremely shocking. However, both of them might have already suffered. This caused killing intent to surge in Lin Sun's heart. In order to obtain the flying immortal token, those fellows were truly unscrupulous. Not long after, Lin Sun saw the dragon subduing path from afar. The path stretched from the bottom to the top, like a winding dragon that stretched into the sky. The dragon's head was at the peak of Mount Yulong. Without the flying immortal token, you still want to reach the peak of Mount Yulong? Wishful thinking. If you don't want to die, then leave quickly. On the dragon's subduing path at the foot of the mountain, a cold voice sounded. It was a man in a dark green robe and holding a bronze spear. He had an extremely capable and terrifying bearing. He stood before the dragon's subduing path like a man guarding the pass, ostentatious and cold. There were many cultivators gathered in the vicinity, and it was extremely unsightly for them to be reprimanded and expelled in such a manner. Through their conversation, Lin Sun also learned that the vigorous man was called Niefu. He came from the primitive Taoist court and was an extremely powerful, peerless great saint. In these past few days, many experts had tried to enter this place by force, yet all of them were annihilated by Niefu. Niefu's methods were brutal, bloody, and horrifying. Boring. You don't have the guts to force your way in, yet you're unwilling to leave. Trash like you want to get a share of this opportunity? Don't you feel ashamed? Niefu did not hide his mockery. The faces of many experts nearby darkened. Some of them couldn't help but want to barge in, but they were stopped by their companions. Can't you tell? He's provoking you on purpose to send you to your death. As soon as these words were spoken, it instantly dispelled that person's intention to force his way through. Niefu seemed to feel extremely bored when he saw this, and he said lazily, "Cowards, truly fucking cowards. If I were all of you, I would have slit my throat and committed suicide a long time ago, so as to avoid living in this world and making a fool of myself. All right, Niefu, go to the top of the mountain. Your senior brother Kuan is looking for you. I'll take care of this place." A slender, seemingly fragile girl in a red robe appeared. Niefu nodded, then carried his bronze spear and climbed up the mountain, disappearing from sight. Tao Yao. Some people were shocked, and it caused a commotion. Many people kept quiet out of fear, and many people's expressions even changed. They left quietly, as if they didn't dare to stay any longer. Because this seemingly delicate red-robed young girl was even more ferocious than Niefu. She was a pure blood of the Taowu battle clan. She had a perverse temperament and killed people like flies. Niefu would deliberately provoke her before killing, but she wouldn't. To her, killing completely depended on her mood. Tao Yao stood alone in front of the mountain path. Her small face was round, her mouth was rosy, and her eyes were clear and childish. She looked like an immature young girl. However, no one dared to look her in the eyes. Get lost. She spoke a single word, but it made many experts present feel as if they had suffered a great calamity. They turned around and left without daring to stay at all. But some people were unwilling. Puff! Tao Yao's figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, she appeared in front of a strong man. She stretched out her hand and took off a bloody head. Until Tao Yao's figure returned to the mountain path, the headless corpse fell to the ground with a loud bang. Crack! Tao Yao exerted force, and the head in her palm exploded. Blood splashed everywhere. She showed a sweet smile. The weak can only be slaughtered. Does anyone else want to have a try? Many people were so shocked that their scalps were numb, and they felt cold all over. It was too cruel, killing without a word. Soon, many experts retreated, not daring to stay. Lin Sun watched all this calmly. When he was about to step forward, he was stopped by Ahu, who transmitted a voice to him. Have you ever thought that the trap on the Hidden Dragon Mountain is actually aimed at you alone? Lin Sun was shocked. Blocking the mountain path and gathering the descendants of Wilderness Taoist Court, Chinquan Taoist Court, Taowu Battle Clan, Blood Kylan Battle Clan, and other forces. Other cultivators are not allowed to approach, but only those with the Feishin token are allowed to climb the mountain. Who said quickly, if it's just for fighting for the Foundation to become an emperor, it's too strange to set up such a formation. More importantly, the heirs of these great powers all bear a great grudge against you. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. You mean from the beginning, this killing trap on the Yulong Mountain was prepared for me? Ahu nodded, looked up at the winding dragon-crouching path not far away, and transmitted a voice. If there's really a chance to become an emperor at the top of this mountain, why don't I see some other powerful figures, such as when Qing Shue and Hua Xingli? If they come, who can block the mountain path? Lin Sun was silent for a moment, and said calmly, even if it's a killing trap, if I don't show up, won't I let those guys down? Ahu, don't expose yourself. Just follow me secretly. Lin Sun made a decision. Ahu sighed in his heart. Was it reckless and arrogant to insist on going, knowing that there was a killing trap in front of him? No, it was just for the friends he cared about. How many times have I said that this mountain path is only open to those with the Flying Immortals token? I ask you again, does anyone have this token? Tao Yao's voice resounded in the field. Many people secretly cursed that even if someone had the Flying Immortals token, who would dare to show up in such a situation? They would have slipped away long ago. But at this moment, Lin Sun moved forward alone, his black eyes clear and calm, and went directly to the dragon-crouching path. Lin Sun. Oh my God, this guy showed up. Suddenly, there was a cry of surprise in the nearby area. A young man from the ancient Desolation realm killed Yin Chunjun, Luong, and others one after another. As early as in the treasure refining place, he had been notorious. Who didn't know him? You really came. Tao Yao's eyes were full of frightening light, and her red robe was fluttering without wind. She waved her sleeve, and a scarlet sword case opened, and a sword light flashed out. Crack! The scarlet sword chi was like a bloody rainbow, so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. It was like a peerless, ominous sword flying across the sky to destroy the world. Many people were terrified, and their faces changed. This was an extremely terrible secret treasure inherited from the Taowu fighting clan, with monstrous killing power. In the past few days, countless peerless great saints had been killed by this sword with a single strike. Obviously, Tao Yao also knew how terrible Lin Sun's combat power was. As soon as she made a move, she didn't think of confronting Lin Sun head-on at all, and directly used the strongest means. Lin Sun walked forward as if he didn't notice it. When the scarlet sword chi came, he raised his hand and grabbed it lightly, as if he was picking flowers with his fingers. In the next moment, the fierce, ferocious, overbearing, and terrifying wisp of sword chi was grabbed in his palm. It was like a dead snake being pinched at its weak point. What? Tao Yao was shocked. The sword chi in this sword case had been cultivated by the old monster of the Taowu bloodline for 8,000 years. Its sword intent and killing power were strong enough to easily kill a great saint. But she didn't expect that Lin Sun could resolve it as soon as he raised his hand. Bang! The scarlet sword chi exploded in Lin Sun's palm. In the rain of light, Lin Sun's figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, he appeared in front of the mountain road. Tao Yao's face changed. Although she was also a great saint with extraordinary combat power, she didn't dare to fight against Lin Sun. Without hesitation, she took out a round, bloody shield to protect herself. The shield was flowing with mysterious bloody light patterns, which was mysterious and unpredictable. Tao Yao turned around and rushed up the mountain road. Boom! Lin Sun ran the great way furnace scripture and punched through the bloody shield. With a bang, it burst into pieces like a piece of paper. Tao Yao screamed, and her heart trembled. It was terrible. The shield was also a powerful holy treasure, but it was smashed by Lin Sun's punch. How terrible was Lin Sun's combat power? Don't you want a fairy token? Why are you running away? A cold and indifferent voice sounded. Lin Sun's figure suddenly appeared at incredible speed, and he punched again. Lin Sun smashed down like an ancient mountain. Tao Yao couldn't avoid it. Her hands glowed, and she resisted with all her strength. However, the power contained in Lin Sun's punch was peerlessly horrible. In an instant, Tao Yao's arms were shattered, and the fist force poured out. Her whole body was suppressed, and she was smashed on the hard steps of the mountain road. Blood splashed everywhere. No one knew how many bones in her thin and delicate body were broken. One punch. There was an exclamation in the distance. Everyone was shocked. A pure-blood descendant of the dignified Taowu tribe, a powerful master who killed without blinking, was punched to the ground by Lin Sun. Ah! Tao Yao screamed. Her hair was disheveled, and her body was bathed in blood. She couldn't get up from the steps. Bang! Lin Sun stepped on Tao Yao's body and went up to the dragon-subduing path. His figure was majestic like a demon. In the same place, Tao Yao's body exploded completely, and blood splashed everywhere. When her soul drifted, it was quietly devoured by Little Silver, who appeared beside her. Thanks to Brother Bandit's reward. Brother Bandit is a famous reader of Zhongneng. I've heard of him for a long time. I didn't expect that he was also reading Tianjiao. Chapter 1813. Tao Yao was killed with one punch, and the smell of blood made everyone tremble. Everyone felt a monstrous killing intent from Lin Sun, and they couldn't help but have a strong premonition. Lin Sun didn't care about the foundation of becoming an emperor at all. He was here to kill. Let's go, follow him. An earth-shattering battle is about to break out. At this moment, the cultivators nearby all returned, shouting excitedly, and their blood was boiling. Before, both Niefu and Tao Yao were extremely overbearing and domineering. Lin Sun's attack made them feel refreshed and relieved. When they saw Lin Sun kill his way up the dragon-subduing path, many people followed him without hesitation. Everyone knew that Lin Sun's appearance was bound to set off a bloody storm on Mount Yulong. As soon as he set foot on the dragon-subduing path, Lin Sun immediately felt that the space was full of taboo rules, and he couldn't teleport all. Moreover, this winding path seemed to be only a few meters wide, but it gave people a feeling that it was boundless. Superposition space? Lin Sun experienced it as he walked. Who? Suddenly, there was a shout on the path. This place has been blocked. Get down the mountain. Lin Sun reached out his hand and grabbed. Boom! The void tumbled like a tide, and a figure was grabbed out of a rock dozens of meters away like a chick. This was also a ruthless figure of the Blood Kylan Battle Clan, but his body was crushed before he could struggle, and blood poured down like a waterfall. Lin Sun continued up the mountain without looking back. Many cultivators following Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp when they saw this. This was too overbearing, and this kind of combat power was too shocking. Master, I found out that the young golden-winged Rock King and Yuan Fatian appeared here 3 days ago. The former was suppressed by Guzong Xin, and the latter by Kuan Julin, Little Silver said in Lin Sun's ear. Little Silver whispered in Lin's ear. He had just devoured some of Tao Yao's remnant souls and obtained some valuable information. However, they were not killed. They said that they wanted to use their lives to force you to surrender. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. So, they really set up a trap here to target me? Little Silver nodded and told Lin Sun some more information. At the peak of Mount Yulong, there were many tyrannical figures gathered. They were all from the Antiquity Dao Court, Heaven and Earth Dao Court, Blood Qilin War Race, Swanee War Race, and other great powers. The most direct purpose of their layout here was to kill Lin Sun and seize the flying immortal token. Among these powerful figures, there were familiar names such as Tao Jianxing, Guzong Xin, Kuan Julin, etc. Many of them were top and dazzling figures amongst the great saints, and it could be said that experts were as numerous as trees in a forest. The gathering of such a force was sufficient to make any cultivator tremble in fear. Right, in the memories of Tao Yao's soul, there were indeed people who ascended the peak of the mountain with a flying immortal token and entered the mysterious forbidden area. Moreover, there were more than one of them. Little Silver said quickly. With the flying immortal tokens they seized from Golden-Winged Rock King and the others, some experts who came with Gutsangshin have already charged into that mysterious forbidden area. I understand. The killing intent surged in Lin's heart. Not long after, another figure appeared on the mountain path. He wore a dark green robe and held a bronze spear in his hand. His expression was cold. It was Nie Fu who had just left the foot of the mountain. Lin's son, you. Nie Fu was stunned at first, and then his pupils shrank sharply. Without hesitation, he turned around and was about to rush to the top of the mountain. Realizing that something was wrong, he was going to deliver the message. Puff! The broken blade suddenly swept out and flashed in the void like a streamer. Nie Fu's legs were cut off, and his upper body was smashed on the mountain path with a muffled groan and painful cry. At the beginning, at the foot of the mountain, Nie Fu regarded all the heroes as nothing. He ridiculed and provoked them wantonly, and no one dared to fight against him. But now he was seriously injured, and his legs were cut off with only one strike. The bloody scene caused all the cultivators that followed behind Lin's son to be astounded. Lin's son seems to be even more terrifying than the rumors say. This time, Lin's son didn't kill Nie Fu. He took out a silver rope, tied Nie Fu's body, and dragged him on the ground. It was like dragging a dying animal. Many people were frightened. Nie Fu was the successor of the primitive Taoist court. Who dared to humiliate him like this on the starry ancient path? But Lin's son did it without blinking his eyes. Whoosh! A gray arrow shot from the front of the mountain path at an incredible speed, tearing a straight crack in the void. Lin's son didn't even look at it. He raised his hand, grabbed, and threw the arrow in the direction for which it came at a faster speed. Puff! The dull sound of flesh being pierced rang out, and someone screamed. There was a man in brocade clothes, whose chest had been pierced. His face was pale, and his body was twitching in a pool of blood. Lin's son didn't hesitate to tie the man up and strung him on the same rope as Nie Fu. Lin's son dragged him forward. They went up the stone steps. The two preys were dragged, and their bodies collided with the stone steps from time to time. Although they didn't cause any real harm, they looked extremely humiliated and embarrassed. They screamed, roared, and cursed, but it didn't help. Lin's son, who was walking in front, didn't even look back. Soon, more enemies appeared on the mountain path. There were more than 10 of them, both men and women, and all of them were powerful and far more powerful than ordinary cultivators. When the cultivators who followed Lin's son saw this, they thought Lin's son would encounter trouble, but they were stunned in the next moment. Lin's son stepped forward, and thousands of blazing, vast, and fierce sword chi suddenly rushed out of his body. They were dense and condensed into mountains of sword chi, and then they smashed down. Earth Demon, Soar Mountain. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering roar resounded. More than 10 men and women also realized the danger, and they took out their secret treasures and exerted their Taoist skills to attack with all their strength. But all their efforts were in vain. Every mountain of sword chi was unimaginably heavy, and it was full of unparalleled killing intent and imprinted with Tai-Chien sword spirit. Treasures and Dao techniques were like bubbles that couldn't withstand a single blow, and they were completely crushed and dispersed in space. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 men and women were also suppressed. Their bodies were covered with cuts and bruises, dripping with blood, and shocking sword marks crisscrossed on them. All the people present were stunned. In a one-on-one battle, Lin's son killed them as easily as slaughtering chickens, and this was terrifying. Yet now, under the circumstances that he was fighting many by himself, Lin's son still suppressed all of them with a single strike. His all-powerful and invincible demeanor had completely exceeded the imagination of everyone. Without exception, all these suppressed experts were tied up one by one, and they were dragged behind Lin's son like grasshoppers on a rope. Bang! 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 Their bodies collided with the stone steps, and the muffled sound was like a horrifying blood-colored note that sent chills down one's spine. He wants to shed all pretenses of cordiality with the heirs of those great powers. Someone cried out in shock. Who dares to treat the heirs of those great powers like he does on the ancient path of the starry sky? Those cultivators who followed behind Lin Sun had originally come to watch the show, but now all of them were shocked to the point their scalps went numb and their emotions fluctuated. Lin Sun was too ruthless and fearless, and they didn't dare imagine it. Mount Yulong was extremely lofty, and the mountain path was as long as a dragon. Because flying and teleportation were impossible, the speed of ascending the steps was comparatively much slower. However, no one would feel bored or tormented, because along the way, Lin Sun was like a sharp awl, rushing forward all the way, tearing through the checkpoints controlled by the enemy one after another. In the following time, the number of prey on the rope in Lin Sun's hand gradually increased. No matter men or women, whether they were the heirs of the primitive Taoist court, the Qingquan Taoist court, or the descendants of the Blood Kylan battle clan or the Tao battle clan, they were all suppressed. No one was Lin Sun's opponent, and no one could stop Lin Sun from climbing the mountain. Along the way, the stone steps were also stained with blood. From beginning to end, Lin Sun looked indifferent, as if he was taking a stroll in the courtyard, and his mood didn't fluctuate at all. No one knew how angry he was when he was sure that this trap in Hidden Dragon Mountain was aimed at him. Did they think that Lin Sun didn't dare to kill? Then today, he would kill to his heart's content. Halfway up the mountain, a green pine stood in the white snow. A group of men and women gathered and sat on the ground, boiling snow and tea, drinking and chatting with each other. The one in the lead was a young man with long hair that hung loosely over his shoulders. He tasted the tea and said with a smile, "This trap was set up for Lin Sun, but I didn't expect to catch two prey with the same flying immortal token. It's a pleasant surprise." Others couldn't help laughing. It said that these two prey have a close relationship with Lin Sun. I wonder if Lin Sun can't help coming to help when he hears of this. Someone said thoughtfully, "I hope he comes." Someone's eyes were cold. This man is rampant and cruel. He killed Senior Yin Chunjun. If we don't avenge him, the descendants of Qingquan Taoism court will be laughed at to death. The lazy young man was about to say something, but his face suddenly changed. At the same time, a dull and dense crashing sound came from the mountain road far below. Many people were stunned. He's coming. The lazy look of the leading young man faded, and his expression became dignified. Who? Lin Sun. What? The group of men and women who were boiling snow and tea all stood up suddenly, showing a look of disbelief. Did that guy really come? It seemed very funny. It should be known that they set up this trap to deal with Lin Sun. But now that Lin Sun really came, they couldn't believe it. It seemed that they didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so bold and fearless. Then, in the perception of their spiritual awareness, they all saw a bloody and cruel picture, which made them all widen their eyes, as if they were struck by lightning. On the misty, ancient mountain road, a young man in moon-white clothes went up the steps, like a traveler who climbed the mountain to seek seclusion, with a leisurely manner. But behind him, there was a rope winding around the stone steps. Many bloody bodies were tied to the rope like grasshoppers. There were dozens of them. Chapter 1814. One man, dragging a string of bloody prey, climbed up the mountain. The bloody scene made the successors of the Universe Taoist court, standing on the mountainside, change their expressions. This child actually appeared in such a brutal manner. This was something they hadn't expected at all. "Go and inform Senior Guzong Shin that the target has appeared," the leading man said quickly. Whoosh, a woman suddenly transformed into a dazzling golden bird, flapped her wings, and flew away. The taboo power of space, which was enough to stop any practitioner from flying, obviously couldn't stop this woman who was originally a divine bird. At this point, the leading man breathed a sigh of relief, and his eyes became sharp and cold. "Get ready to fight." He gave the order. The people nearby all took action. They either took out their treasures or operated their secret methods. They were like the gods in the mountain, overlooking Lin Sun, who was walking slowly in the distance. On the ancient sandstone steps, Lin Sun raised his head and glanced at these people without any emotion in his eyes. Boom! The next moment, the broken sword swept out like a white flash of lightning. Without any nonsense, the battle began. The powerful and overbearing attack made the successors of the universe Taoist court look gloomy, and they attacked without hesitation. At the same time, on the top of Yulong Mountain, the mountain wind was whistling, and the sea of clouds was steaming. The experts of the universe Taoist court, the wilderness Taoist court, the Tao battle clan, and the Blood Kylan battle clan gathered here. The scene was amazing. There were many great saints among them, and each of them was like the sun in the sky. Their bodies were flowing with strange lights, which illuminated the top of the mountain. Many people were filled with pride. With so many heirs of the major forces gathered in one place, any expert would be torn to pieces in the face of such a powerful force. Swish, on the mountain road, a golden bird rushed out and said quickly, "Senior Gu, Lin Sun has killed all the way from the bottom of the mountain." These words caused the surroundings to become restless, and many people were astounded. That fellow actually really came? Haha, he doesn't know death. Now that he has appeared, it's not in vain that we have been waiting here for so many days. Gu Zongxin sneered. Many top figures were gathered here, and they were all outstanding talents from various forces. There was no lack of peerless geniuses ranked on the Starry Sky Great Saints list. In the face of such a brilliant gathering of heroes, it was enough to suffocate and make anyone feel frightened. Lin Sun was doomed to be a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Everyone, the target has appeared. Those who have enmity will take revenge, and those who have grievances will take revenge. I only have one thing to say. Today we must kill this brat here. Gu Zongxin's expression was cold. Of course. There were more than 10 peerless great sages standing nearby, all of them revealing killing intent. Their bodies either seethed with divine flames, flowed with golden light, shot into the sky with sword insight, or swallowed the world. Every single one of their auras were peerlessly formidable, and every single move they made carried the might to obliterate the heavens and the earth. This was a peak existence among absolute great saints. He was dazzling like a star, and if he was placed on the starry sky ancient path, he would be a stunning figure whose name reigned supreme. Tao Jianxing and Kuan Julin were among them. The reason why they, who belonged to different forces, could work together was that they had all suffered great losses in the hands of Lin Sun when they were in the treasure refining place. If they didn't work together, they wouldn't be able to suppress Lin Sun. Now, hundreds of them had gathered and were ready to fight. They were confident that they could defeat any peer, let alone Lin Sun. Haha, Lin Sun probably didn't expect how much hatred he had aroused. Gu Zongxin said slowly, full of ambition. Bah! A voice full of sarcasm sounded. In front of the cliff not far away, a bloody rock raised its head with difficulty and sneered. It's shameful to bully the few with numbers. Don't you feel ashamed to talk so complacently? Its pair of wings were broken, and its body was pierced by a huge bronze awl. It was nailed to the ground fiercely. Its blood was still flowing, and it was unable to break free. Not far away, a hoarse and weak sneer came out. "Little Rock King, you're wrong. How can they be ashamed?" This was a vigorous rock, but its fur was cracked, and its flesh was badly mutilated. Its arms were broken, and a pair of shoulder bones were pierced by a dark chain, imprisoning it on the ground. Yuan Fatian, like the young golden-winged rock, he was suppressed and couldn't move. He was seriously injured and dying. Noisy. Gu Zongxin's face darkened. Serve them well. Immediately, 2 people stood out, each holding an iron whip covered with dense, bloody Taoist patterns, and lashed down fiercely. Crack! 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 Every blow was no less than a blunt knife cutting the bones. The young golden-winged rock and Yuan Faxian's bodies twitched violently. The pain went deep into their bones and affected their souls. It could be called the most cruel torture in the world. You have a tough bone, but you're just a loser. If you weren't still useful, I would have killed you long ago. Gu Songxin looked cold. Other strong people nearby also sneered. They all knew that these two people had a close relationship with Lin Sun. All the losses they had suffered from Lin Sun were vented on these two people. Haha, with them, Lin Sun will be afraid to take action. I like to see whether he will make a choice for these two people. It must be very unpleasant. Tao Jianxing laughed out loud with a cruel expression. It's a pity that before we arrived at the top of Yulong Mountain, some people with flying immortal tokens entered the mysterious forbidden area. Otherwise, if we caught them together, Lin Sun would be more embarrassed and uncomfortable. Kuan Jiulin sighed softly. Don't worry. Lu Xuanji and some other practitioners have already gone to the mysterious forbidden area. It's only a matter of time before they kill those people with flying immortal tokens. Gu Songxin said casually. There was a mysterious restricted area not too far away from where they stood, and it was suffused by dense white mist. If one didn't possess a flying immortal token, then anyone who forcefully trespassed into it would surely suffer misfortune. Just as everyone was talking loudly, suddenly a dull crash came from the mountain road below, attracting many people's attention. Then, the conversation stopped abruptly. A strange and bloody picture appeared in everyone's mind. On the mountain road, Lin Sun walked up the stairs alone. He dragged a rope behind him, and on the rope were numerous bloody corpses of experts. There were a few dozen of them, and every single one of them was heavily injured, covered in scars, and on the verge of death. Among these captive strongmen, there were more than a dozen descendants of the Universe Taoism court who had stopped Lin Sun halfway up the mountain. Seeing this, the woman who had turned into a divine bird to inform Lin Sun couldn't help screaming and turning pale. The top of Yulong Mountain was also shocked at this moment. Damn it, damn it. Those are our companions of the Bloodscale Battle Clan. How dare you humiliate the descendants of the primitive Taoism court like this? On the top of the mountain, the crowd was furious. Many people's faces were gloomy, and their eyes were full of killing intent. They stared at Lin Sun fiercely. The boastful talk from before had vanished, and the atmosphere in the surroundings had become extremely murderous, causing the clouds in the sky to fall into disorder. Gu Songxin, Kuan Jiulin, Tao Jianxing, and others looked cold and ugly at this moment. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would appear in this way, tying up a group of strongmen with a rope and dragging them forward. This was undoubtedly the most direct provocation and humiliation. Ha ha ha, Lin Sun, you're the best. I can die in peace now that I can see you again. Yuan Fatian laughed wildly, with tears in his eyes. He didn't expect that Lin Sun would really come. Didn't he change as before? Fool, can't you see that this is a trap to deal with you? Go. I'd rather die than let you lose your life. The young golden-winged rock cursed. He was anxious. He was not so anxious and angry just now, not to mention the whipping and humiliation. Lin Sun stepped on the top of the mountain and looked through the crowd at the young golden-winged rock, who was nailed to the ground by the iron awl, and at Yuan Fatian, whose shoulder bone was pierced by the chain. He felt suffocated. They came for me in the first place. You guys were just dragged into this by me. Lin Sun's voice was low, and his black eyes were deep and terrible. Go! The young golden-winged rock roared, and his eyes turned red. Didn't this guy know that the people gathered here were all powerful figures on the starry sky ancient path, and those in the 9 regions couldn't be compared to them? Want to leave? Impossible, Gu Songxin said coldly. His killing intent surged and swept across the void. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes locked on Lin Sun like lightning. He said word by word, "Today all of you will die." Bang! Lin Sun stood still and didn't move. However, behind him, the body of a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Tao court who was tied up suddenly exploded, and a rain of blood splashed high into the air. Obviously, this was Lin Sun's answer to Gu Songxin. You're courting death. The descendants of the Universe Taoist court were furious and wanted to rush up, but they were stopped by the other strong people present. Lin Sun controlled the lives of dozens of strong people, Not only the descendants of the universe Taoist court, but also the strong people of other forces. This was a huge threat, and everyone present was afraid to take action. Let them go, and I'll let these people go too. Lin Sun's expression was cold. This was the reason why he had never been merciless in his slaughter along the way. He wanted to exchange the lives of these enemies for the lives of young golden-winged rock and Yuan Fatian. Wishful thinking, Kuan Julin shouted angrily. Originally, they captured young golden-winged rock and Yuan Fatian to threaten Lin Sun. Who would have thought that Lin Sun would do the same? Bang! Behind Lin Sun, a descendant of the primitive Taoist court died suddenly. His body was torn into pieces, and his death was so miserable that the other strong people who were tied up screamed and screamed. This cruel and bloody method caused Gu, Songxin, and the others to grit their teeth with hatred, and they were angered to the point their eyes almost split apart. This bastard actually came prepared. Aren't you worried that we'll kill these two people? Tao Jinxing said coldly and threatened Lin Sun. Bang! This time, among the captives behind Lin Sun, a descendant of the Swanee war clan died suddenly and fell in a pool of blood. From beginning to end, Lin Sun seemed extremely powerful and domineering. His methods were also extremely bloody, which made the strong people present tremble. They had no doubt that if they provoked him again, Lin Sun would only kill more captives. Chapter 1815. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the air seemed stagnant. Golden-winged Rock King and Yuan Fatian were both speechless. They were shocked by Lin Sun's bloody means, and they were both moved and worried. If this continued, Lin Sun would only be hated by these successors from the starry sky ancient path, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Gu Songxin and others looked gloomy. They were struggling in their hearts and sullen. Being threatened by Lin Sun with the help of the strong ones in their forces made them so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. They had carefully prepared for this game, but Lin Sun was so strong before the game started, which was beyond their expectation. Could it be that in your eyes, the lives of the people I've captured are so insignificant? Lin Sun said with a sarcastic tone. Gu Songxin and others' faces changed. Lin Sun's words were too harsh. If they got back to the sects behind them, it would inevitably have a negative impact on them. Let them go, and I will also let these two people go. Tao Jinxing said word by word, as if squeezed out of his teeth. The captives all breathed a sigh of relief. Even ants were greedy for life, not to mention the practitioners who had already made proud achievements on the Great Tao. In the face of real death, they would only be more afraid of death. No, you let them go first. Lin Sun said flatly. Tao Jinxing was furious. Before his voice died away, another captive of the Tao war clan died with a bang behind Lin Sun. His blood spilled on the spot. This scene made Tao Jinxing's eyes almost pop out, and he was about to go crazy. Lin Sun said indifferently. I said, you let them go first. What's more, I am here. Are you worried that I will escape? Gu Songxin and others looked gloomy. Finally, they discussed in secret and reached a unanimous decision to let the captives go. This made the others present, and those who were captured by Lin Sun, all let out a sigh of relief. How could the lives of two strong men in the ancient desolation realm be more important than the lives of the successors of these great forces? What was more, even if Lin Sun let these two people go, did he think he could leave with his friends today? Wishful thinking. Puff. The iron all that had been stabbed into the young golden-winged Rock King's body was pulled out. At the same time, the chain that had been stabbed into Yuan Fatian's shoulder bone was also pulled out. Both of them staggered to their feet with dazed expressions. This feeling of surviving a calamity caused them to practically wonder if they were dreaming. They had originally thought that there was no way out. Brother Lin, thank you so much. Yuan Fatian's lips were trembling and his voice was hoarse. He was so grateful that he wanted to say something but stopped himself. The young golden-winged Rock King stepped forward and patted Lin Sun on the shoulder. He didn't say a word, but his eyes were full of emotions. It's all right. With me around, the sky won't collapse. I'll drink with the two of you after I kill these eyesores. As Lin Sun spoke, He took the two of them into the Great Way Endless Tower, where Old Toad and Alu would help heal them. Now, it's time for you to release him. Guzong Xin roared. All the others present fixed their eyes on Lin's son. If he dared to escape, they would attack him with all their strength. But to their surprise, Lin's son seemed very happy at this moment. With a flick of his wrist, the ropes binding the captives were put away. The captives were overjoyed to have escaped death. They rushed back to Guzong Xin and the others. At this point, Guzong Xin and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. Ha ha ha, Lin's son, you idiot. Do you really think I'll let them go so easily? Suddenly, Tao Jianxing laughed with a complacent look on his face. I've planted the poisonous insect in the bodies of your two friends. As long as I think about it, they will die immediately. As soon as these words came out, all the people present were refreshed, and the anger and depression that had accumulated in their hearts were swept away. No one had expected that Tao Jianxing had prepared such a backup plan. Isn't it too early to be happy? But Lin's son looked very calm, without any panic. Instead, there was a sneer on his face. Bang! His voice hadn't even finished resounding through the air when one of the captives who had just escaped from the jaws of death suddenly stiffened before falling soundlessly to the ground. His body was still there, but his soul had been erased. This sudden scene caused Tao Jianxing's smile to instantly freeze, and the hearts of everyone present jerked as they felt a chill run down their spines. The pupils of Guzong Xin and the others also shrank. There was no doubt that Tao Jianxing had a backup plan, but so did Lin's son. This shocked and angered all the people present. Now hand over the antidote. If you dare to play any tricks, I promise that all the captives will die miserably. Lin's son said coldly. Tao Jianxing's cheeks were livid, and his eyes were about to burst into flames. In the previous confrontation, Lin's son had taken the initiative in every aspect, which made him almost explode with anger. Brother Tao, promise him that I'll kill you in an upright way. Guzong Xin thought. Okay. Tao Jianxing finally agreed. He took out 2 cyan cocoons and threw them to Lin's son. Lin's son checked them and found nothing unusual, so he handed them over to Yuan Fatian and young golden-winged rock in the Tower of Endless Way. Lin's son was relieved until they were completely sure that there was no hidden danger in them. Little Silver, come back, Lin's son said. With a swoosh, a silver light swept out from a captive and returned to Lin's son. It was Lin's son. Seeing this scene, the strong man who was hidden in Little Silver's body was so scared that he felt weak all over and felt a lingering fear. Guzong Xin and the others all raised their eyebrows and secretly felt lucky. Immediately, their faces became cold, and they looked at Lin's son with undisguised killing intent. Lin's son, what else can you do now? Tao Jianxing grinned grimly. Have you learned your lesson? Lin's son glanced at him coldly, which made Tao Jianxing surprised. Could it be that Lin's son still had other hidden cards? The next moment, Lin's son laughed. Are you scared? Don't worry. I'm not as despicable as you. You. Tao Jianxing flew into a rage out of shame. He knew that he was fooled by Lin's son, so he couldn't help feeling embarrassed. In the distance of the mountain road below, many practitioners who followed Lin's son saw what happened on the top of the mountain. So far, they couldn't help but be shocked. If it were other practitioners, they would have collapsed and surrendered in the face of such a great battle. But Lin's son, facing so many enemies alone, still had a disdainful and calm momentum. He was just like a god, which moved people. However, the current situation was clear. These onlookers were all worried about Lin's son. Was he really going to fight against enemies in all directions alone? This was simply unimaginable. Lin's son, you killed Yin Chunjun, the successor of Heaven and Earth Taoism court. This hatred must be settled today. Guzong Xin couldn't hold back and shouted. In the previous situation, although they were restrained by Lin's son in every way, they didn't lose anything. But now it was different. Lin's son was alone on the top of Yulong Mountain, which was the best time to kill him. Tao Jianxing also said coldly, if you are willing to take the initiative to leave the flying immortal token in your hand, and kneeled down to atone for your crime, I can give you a way to live. Humph. A way to live? Don't even think about it. This man must die today. Kuan Jiolin's face was gloomy. Others also spoke one after another, all of them full of killing intent. They regarded Lin Sun as a fish on the chopping block. Some of them coveted the flying immortal token, and some wanted to take his life. There were also some that had set their sights on the treasures in his possession, because they were clearly aware that when he was near the upside-down mountain where he refined treasures, he'd once withdrawn a mysterious and unfathomable pagoda and jade bottle, and their might was extraordinarily great and had blocked the joint attacks of numerous experts. Seeing this scene, the onlookers in the distance were all frightened. Lin Sun was in danger. Are you all done? Lin Sun suddenly said with a scornful smile on his face, I only have one request. You must all die. As soon as this remark came out, the whole audience was silent. Everyone showed an incredible look as if they were looking at a madman. Ha ha ha. Obviously, this little thing hasn't clearly realized his own situation, so he dares to talk nonsense like this. Guzong Xian laughed. He was surrounded by wisps of black sword intent, sharp and fierce, like an ancient fierce god. Do it! At the same time, Tao Jinxing shouted. Boom! On the top of the Yulong Mountain, there was suddenly a rolling divine brilliance, which turned into mysterious and complicated symbols, intertwining in the void and evolving into a big formation that covered the sky and the sun. As soon as this formation was formed, the wind and thunder surged, the color changed in all directions, the roars of gods and demons, the chanting of sages and sages resounded, and the law of the Great Way evolved into a chaotic world, surging and covering. The formation of demons and chaos. It was an ancient holy formation inherited from the heaven and earth Taoism court. It was said that in ancient times, there was an emperor who had personally deduced this formation, and its lethality was shocking. This was a trump card carefully arranged by Guzong Xian. In an instant, Lin Sun's figure was submerged in it and could no longer be seen. On the mountain road below, the onlookers were all shocked. This formation appeared suddenly, and they didn't even notice a trace of it before. The aura exuded by the formation was also terrifying, causing many peerless great saints to tremble in fear and their hair to stand on end. Lin Sun is still too careless. This is a killing trap. In order to kill him, Guzong Xian has obviously made enough preparations. Many people sighed in their hearts. On the other hand, Guzong Xian and the others revealed cold expressions. This idiot dared to come here alone to court death. Did he really think they had prepared for nothing these days? Activate the formation and kill this bastard. Guzong Xian gave the order without delay. From the beginning to the end, they didn't underestimate Lin Sun at all, and it was because they regarded Lin Sun as a dangerous person that they didn't hesitate to join forces and spend a lot of effort to set up such a powerful formation of demons and chaos. It was for the sake of giving Lin Sun a fatal blow. And now, it was time to close the net and kill the enemy. The situation in the field changed dramatically. Only Ahu, who was hiding in the crowd of onlookers, raised the corners of his mouth with a playful smile. If a Taoist inscription grandmaster who could build a seemingly eternal city of Tao protectors on his own was trapped and killed by a grand formation. Chapter 1816. Rise, rise, rise. At this moment, Gu Zongxin, Kuan Jilin, Tao Jinxing, and more than a dozen great sages were standing in the void. Some were holding apricot flags, some were holding red copper bells, some are operating purple wheels, and some are waving ancient scrolls. In the formation of demons casting chaos, the sound of Taoism roared, and the light swept across, reflecting all kinds of doomsday-like scenes. The scene that shook the heavens and the earth caused everyone present to be unable to help but gasp. An ancient killing formation was controlled and operated by many great sages together. Even a sage king was doomed to suffer if trapped in it. Lin Sun was just a peerless great saint. Perhaps he had shown amazing fighting power in the previous battles, but how could he resist such a trap? Lin Sun is finished. On the mountain road below, There were many sharp-eyed people among the spectators. They could judge from the power released by the formation. No matter who was in the great sage realm, as long as he was trapped, there was no way to survive. Boom! The power of the formation of demons casting chaos became more and more terrifying, causing the sky to shake. On the huge Yulong Mountain, there was an earth-shattering scene. Fortunately, Yulong Mountain was one of the 9 secrets in the Kunlun ruins. It was incomparably strong and immortal, so it could withstand the breath of such a killing formation. If it was in the outside world, not to mention a mountain, even a vast city would be instantly refined and destroyed by the formation. Kill! Tao Jianxing was in high spirits, with a grim smile on his face. His heart was full of joy. Before, he was held back by Lin Sun in every way, which made him almost cough up blood. But now it was different. Lin Sun was like a trapped beast, ready to be slaughtered. Well, everyone be careful. It doesn't matter if he dies, but don't refine all his treasures. Gu Zongxin chuckled, hesitant and proud. This time we can trap and kill him thanks to the killing formation in Brother Gu's hands. It is indeed one of the 5 saint prohibitions of the Qingquan Taoist court. It is an eye-opener for me. Kuan Jiolin sighed. The others present also nodded secretly. The might of this formation could really be said to be capable of shaking the heavens and the earth, and it possessed unbelievable destructive might that caused them to be extremely horrified. You flatter me. In fact, Lin Sun is also a powerful figure. Unfortunately, he is too arrogant. Generally speaking, this kind of arrogant person is destined to have a bad end. Gu Zongxin's smile was very reserved. They talked loudly and boastfully as if the outcome had been decided and victory was within their grasp. All the onlookers on the mountain road sighed inwardly. Lin Sun was more than just a powerful figure. He killed Yin Chunjun and Luong. In the Battle of the Upside-Down Mountain, he was the most outstanding one and retreated safely. Furthermore, if he was just an ordinary powerful figure, how could he have attracted the joint attack of so many great forces? It wasn't exaggerated to say that even though this kid was from the ancient Desolation region, his combat strength was formidable and his bearing was peerless. Even if he was on the ancient path of the starry sky, it was sufficient to make most of his peers dim in comparison, and even some peerless figures on the starry sky great saint rankings were unable to raise their heads. But reality was too cruel in the end. After today, such a heaven-defying and peerless figure was bound to be removed from the world. Who wouldn't sigh at this? What? But at this moment, Gu Zongxin suddenly frowned and noticed that something was wrong. He spread out his spiritual awareness to control the formation to sense. In just a moment, his eyes suddenly widened, and he cried out involuntarily, "How is this possible?" His voice was filled with astonishment, as if he had encountered the most incredible thing in the world. Kuan Jilin was stunned and couldn't help asking, "Brother Gu, is it possible that this kid has refined all his treasures?" Others were also confused. Boom! Right at this moment, the divine radiance, the light of the Tao, and the phenomena that blotted out the sky within the devil-slaughtering formation suddenly exploded, and they were dispersed by a terrifying force. The scene within the formation was also clearly reflected in everyone's vision. Lin Sun stood there alone, motionless and unscathed. His moon-white clothes fluttered in the wind, and he looked ethereal like an immortal. This Kuan Jilin, Tao Jianxing and others also widened their eyes and almost fell out. They looked like they had seen a ghost, and the complacency on their faces froze. How is this possible? The power of the demon-slaying formation was so terrible that they couldn't stop praising it and were shocked. It was powerful enough to trap and kill the existence at the level of Saint King. But now, Lin Sun, who was trapped in the formation from beginning to end, was not hurt at all. God, is there something wrong with my eyes? He's fine? Everyone was stunned, and their faces were full of astonishment. Just now, they were sighing and feeling sorry for Lin Sun's death. But they didn't expect that Lin Sun didn't need anyone's pity at all, because even the demon-slaying chaotic world formation that caused one to despair couldn't do anything to him. There was silence in the field. They were all stunned by this scene, and their minds were shocked. In the formation, Lin Sun said with a puzzled face, "Why did you stop? Come on, please continue your performance." His words were like a sharp blade that stabbed fiercely into the hearts of Gu Songxin and the others, causing their expressions to change indeterminately while they were seething with rage. This was undoubtedly the most naked ridicule and humiliation, which made their faces burn as if they had been slapped in the face. "Kill! Kill this bastard with all your strength!" Gu Songxin roared, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged. He was completely angry. Boom! The formation was activated again, and its power was much stronger than before. Whether it was Tao Jianxing, Kuan Jilin, or other great sages, they all tried their best to activate the formation to the extreme. Lin Sun's figure was once again drowned by the overwhelming Taoist light and divine light. This time, it should be enough, right? After a while, Tao Jianxing said with a cold face. Although he could control the formation, he couldn't feel what was happening in it. Only Gu Songxin, who presided over the formation, could feel it. Therefore, when Tao Jianxing asked, he looked at Gu Songxin. In an instant, he noticed that Gu Songxin's expression was not right. His pupils dilated, and he gritted his teeth with a look of disbelief and anger. This scene was also noticed by other practitioners present, and they couldn't help but be shocked. Could it be Boom? At this time, the formation roared again, and the light rain burst and disappeared. Lin Sun's figure stood in the rain of Taoist light. Although he was motionless, he seemed invincible. Even the power of the formation, which was enough to destroy a sage king, collapsed around him. The entire place was shaken, and there was absolute silence. The spectators on a mountain path were all dumbfounded. Ever since they started cultivating, they had never encountered such an inconceivable thing. "Is this the killing trap you set?" Lin Sun said with undisguised sarcasm. "It seems that it's just so." He finally moved and took a step forward. Boom! It was just a step, but seemed to have supreme power. The demon-slaying formation inherited from the heaven and earth Taoism court suddenly exploded. The rolling divine light surged, and the dense Taoist symbols collapsed. With one step, the world was turned upside down, and the formation was destroyed. Everyone revealed astounded expressions as they gazed at the tall figure that lightly walked out of the grand formation. It was like seeing a god. Is this the supreme means of a Taoist master? In the crowd of spectators, whose eyes were a little unfocused. He was also shocked by the amazing means that Lin Sun showed at this moment. "The killing starts now." The low and cold voice swept across the whole field like a cold current, and Lin Sun's figure suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in front of a group of practitioners. His body was like a furnace of the great way that had been accumulating power for a long time, and it burst out a bright torrent of sword intent. Bang! 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 It was too late to stop it. The bodies of these practitioners were drowned in an instant, and then they exploded in the raging sword intent. The moment their flesh and blood splashed out, they were evaporated by the sword chi. They died without a whole body and were turned into ashes. This overbearing and bloody scene made Gu Songxin and others tremble all over. They had no time to think about anything else and attacked with all their strength. "Hurry up! Let's kill this guy together!" The roar of anger was earth-shattering. On the top of Yulong Mountain, all the descendants of the great forces moved, and they besieged Lin Sun like overlapping waves. Rumble, all sorts of unfathomable might, and all sorts of dazzling and resplendent treasures surged in the surroundings as if they were free. Even the heavens and the earth dimmed down while the void fell into disorder. Such a scene caused the spectators to be unable to help but exclaim with shock, and they retreated in horror as they were deeply afraid of being affected by it. All of you can't fight one-on-one, and it's even more impossible to fight one-on-one. Lin Sun's figure glowed like a furnace that burned violently, and the killing intent and rage that had accumulated in his heart had erupted completely at this moment. Clang! The broken blade flashed out while a clear howl surged through the 9 heavens. With a flash, the bodies of a few practitioners were slashed into two at the waist, and they let out shrill cries. Bang! Lin Sun circulated his cultivation technique. As he breathed, it was like a storm was surging, and he moved about in the surroundings. He was arrogant and overbearing like a fiend god, and his murderous aura shook the heavens. Everywhere he passed, all techniques and treasures were blasted to the point of dispersing and being unable to obstruct him. The peerless divine might he emanated caused the spectators in the distance to be dumbstruck. Kill! Gu Tsongxin charged over with his sword in hand while his body emanated black sword intent that shot into the sky. His expression was livid, ferocious, and he attacked without holding back at all. Swoosh! The divine sword in his palm was like a rainbow that gathered the energy of the world, and it possessed copious might. Wherever the sword pointed, a straight crack was plowed open in the sky. This was Gu Tsongxin, a ferocious figure ranked in the top 100 of the great saint rankings. His attack of rage was naturally extraordinary. But Lin Sun merely slapped out with his palm, yet the terrifying sword intent that shot towards him exploded inch by inch, and the force of his palm swept out and slapped Gu Tsongxin flying. Bang! Amidst a muffled bang, blood sprayed from Gu Tsongxin's mouth and nose, and he smashed fiercely against an ancient rock like a kite with its string cut. Gu Tsongxin had been slapped to the point he couldn't resist at all. Many people felt their scalps go numb. Is he still human? On the other hand, Kuan Jilin, Tao Jianxing, and the other great saints who had fought Lin Sun in the past were completely sure that Lin Sun had become even stronger than before. Not only had his cultivation broken through to the intermediate stage of the great saint realm, even his combat strength had more than doubled. Goldfish will stay up late at night to store up a palm, and when it erupts tomorrow, it will release 2 consecutive palm strikes at noon. Chapter 1817. Go to hell. A cold voice came out of Lin Sun's mouth. His fists were like a great furnace, breaking through. The numerous cultivators that charged towards Chun, she had utilized their entire strengths. Yet they were like weeds before this punch, and they were crushed on the spot. Blood and flesh splashed everywhere like a rainstorm. In the outside world, people under the Sage Realm were like ants. The Sage Realm represented a height that countless people could not reach. They could turn the clouds with their breath, burn the mountains, and boil the sea with incredible power. They stood at a higher place on the road of immortality and had a long life. The descendants of the great forces in the field were even more extraordinary. Any one of them was no weaker than the great sage realm, and there were even some peerless great sages among them. But no matter who it was, in front of Lin Sun at this moment, they were like fragile glass, vulnerable chickens and pottery dogs. He galloped with his black hair fluttering. His body was like an immortal furnace, bursting out earth-shattering destructive power. This, of course, was shocking. Perhaps those under the sage realm were like ants, but those above the sage realm were no different from ants in front of Lin Sun, who was in the same realm. Gu Tsongxin, Tao Jianxing, Kuan Jilin, and others were all furious. From the beginning, they did not underestimate Lin Sun. Otherwise, they would not have united together and tried their best to set up a trap here. All this was because of the battle in the inverted mountain. Lin Sun's combat power was so strong that they all felt afraid. But they didn't expect that Lin Sun's combat power had changed dramatically compared with the time when he was in the inverted mountain. What was more unexpected was that the demon slaying formation, which they had high hopes for, was like a decoration in the end and did not cause any harm to Lin Sun at all. At present, Lin Sun was like a demon, sweeping across the field and killing the strong on their side one by one. How could Gu Tsongxin and others not be angry? Suppress. With a furious roar, Kuan Jilin attacked. He was like a divine Kuan wandering in the North Sea, setting off a storm all over the sky. In his hand, there was a bright halberd, flowing with obscure Taoist light. The blade was incomparably sharp, emitting a peerless, fierce light. Sea God's halberd. This was Kuan Jilin's trump card. It was rumored that this halberd was born in a chaotic world and was formed from the world's heaviest profound water. It was a connate, ancient treasure. The void exploded, causing turbulence in the area. The power of Neptune's halberd surprised Lin's son. Dang! He brandished the Avicii sword. A pitch-black purgatory appeared, its sword intent dense. It collided head-on with the sea god's halberd, producing a deafening rumble. Thud, thud, thud. Kuan Julien's body staggered back in the void. The Neptune halberd in his hand buzzed and trembled as he tried to learn how to roll away. Without a doubt, the might of the Avicii sword was completely not inferior to the sea god's halberd. If it was any other holy treasure, it would have been crushed long ago. Buzz! Just as Lin Sun was about to chase after Kuan Jio, a brilliant silver rainbow suddenly flew towards him at an extremely fast speed. It was a slender and translucent shuttle-shaped treasure, like a swimming fish. The sharpness it produced made Lin Sun's body tingle. Kill! Tao Jinxing roared. He was the one controlling the treasure, and his face was filled with cold, killing intent. Whoosh! The fish-like treasure ignored the shackles of space and suddenly appeared in front of Lin's son, stabbing at his brow fiercely. At this moment, the broken blade suddenly appeared and blocked the mysterious blow. But a drop of blood flowed out of Lin's son's brow. The shuttle-shaped treasure was too sharp. Although it was blocked, its breath still swept through Lin's son's brow. He blocked it. Tao Jinxing was stunned, showing a look of disbelief. This treasure of his was also an unfathomable ancient treasure. It looked like a shuttle, but in fact, it was a flying sword named Taiyu. This sword was refined by the void crystal born in Josu. It was a veritable flying sword. It came and went without a trace, unrestrained by space, extremely mysterious and terrible. But just now, this sword was blocked by Lin's son. Humph! Lin's son's eyes were cold, and he suddenly moved to kill Tao Jinxing. Whoosh! Tao Jinxing's face changed slightly, and the Taiyu flying sword swept out again at an incredible speed. But halfway, it was entangled by a thunderstorm whip. The flying sword buzzed and trembled violently, but it was firmly trapped. Purple Thunder Whip. This was a powerful ancient treasure Lin's son obtained from Tu Qingxiong after he killed him under the peach tree. Its power was even stronger than that of the broken blade. The most amazing thing was that the whip was entangled with fierce and domineering purple thunder. When it whipped the void, it could produce a terrible field, which could restrain the killing of space. Crack! Lin's son shook his hand, and the Taiyu flying sword whined. It was bound by the purple thunder whip and fell into Lin's son's palm. Tao Jinxing's mind was backfired, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Oh no! With a horrified look, he tried to dodge, but it was too late. The Avicii sword, which was like a purgatory, swept up a monstrous black flame as it descended from the sky and struck down violently. Boom! In an instant, Tao Jinxing's body seemed to be cut by thousands of knives, showing crisscross sword marks. His skin was torn and his flesh was torn, and his blood was splashing like a waterfall, especially his chest, which was cut open by the sword of Avicii. His internal organs were shattered, and he was smashed to the ground. Bang! Tao Jinxing fell to the ground. His body was broken. He could only let out a scream, and then he was dead. The surging sword chi was too overbearing. It raged in his body and completely destroyed his vitality. God! Tao Jinxing was killed. There was a burst of exclamation in the field. The practitioners who watched the battle in the distance were shocked. Lin's son was so fierce that he showed an invincible momentum. No one could suppress him. Kill! Several peerless great sages joined hands to kill Lin's son. All of them looked extremely solemn. Lin's son's strength was far beyond their imagination. They all tried their best without reservation. In the past, even if Lin's son could resist such a siege, he would inevitably be suppressed, just like the battle in the inverted mountain. But now, he was not the same as before. Before swallowing the peach, he could kill Tu Qingxiong, who ranked 27th on the Starry Sky Great Sages list. After he swallowed the peach, it was equivalent to 10 years of bitter cultivation. For an expert like Lin Sun, who possessed extremely deep reserves, 10 years of bitter cultivation didn't just bring about a transformation in his cultivation. Even his own great Tao had undergone a tremendous change. Under such circumstances, how could he be afraid of a group attack? Open! Lin Sun suddenly shouted loudly in the battlefield. His figure was like a furnace, while the spirit, energy, and essence in his body surged and blazed, and his imposing aura was boundlessly brilliant like the sun that lay across the sky. Bang! Every single punch of his carried the might to shake the heavens and the earth, and it contained the profundities of the 9 transformations of the Calamity Dragon and the fierceness of the 6 slashes of heaven. The might of his fist flashed out and swept in all directions. All the enemies that besieged him in the vicinity seemed as if they'd been struck by a divine mountain, and their bodies rumbled as they were blasted flying and heavily injured. The figure of one of the peerless great sages even exploded into pieces, causing blood to spray in all directions. A wave of astounded cries resounded in the field, and all of them were shocked by this scene. One person was besieged by hundreds of successors from various top forces. Not only was he not suppressed, but he alone swept through the field, causing heads to roll and blood to flow like a river. Such peerless ferocity was simply shocking. If it was spread out, it would definitely cause a monstrous storm. Damn it! How could this be? Did he really come from the ancient Desolation realm? At this moment, Gu Tsangxin, Kuan Julin, and the others all felt a chill in their bodies, and great terror surged in their hearts. On the starry sky ancient path, there had never been a shortage of peerless geniuses, and there was no shortage of peerless figures who were as dazzling as the sun. But no one had expected that a young man who didn't belong to the starry sky ancient path at all would defeat them today. The field was suffused with blood, and the murderous aura was surging. It was a terrible and bloody scene. The battle was still going on. Lin Sun swept through the field decisively, as if he was truly invincible and invincible. Bang! 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 One after another, the experts from the primitive Taoist court, the Qingquan Taoist court, the Blood Kylin Battle Clan, and the Taowu Battle Clan were killed. It was useless to escape. Mount Yulon was covered in a spatial taboo energy, making it impossible to fly or teleport. The reason why Gu Tsangxin and the others had set up a trap here was because they wanted to prevent Lin Sun from escaping when they hunted him. Who would have thought that this spatial taboo energy would become a stumbling block to their escape? Boom! At this moment, Lin Sun became more and more courageous as he fought, venting all the anger and killing intent in his heart. Ever since he entered the Kunlun ruins, he had been regarded as prey and targeted by everyone. Some people coveted the flying celestial token in his hands. Some people wanted to snatch his treasures, and almost no one took him, a young man from the ancient Desolation realm, seriously. If that was the case, Lin Sun wouldn't have flown into a rage. However, when he found out that the young golden-winged Rock King and Yuan Fatian were also in trouble because of the flying celestial token, and they were implicated because of him, Lin Sun was completely enraged. The 6 Dao courts and 10 battle clans had touched Lin Sun's bottom line, so he wouldn't have any scruples at all. Run! Many people broke down. They were scared out of their wits, and they fled down the mountain path in a panic. Damn it! Retreat! When the spectators who were standing on the mountain path saw this, their expressions changed. They were afraid of being affected, and they started to retreat. Only one person did not dodge. Ahu! She wore a yellow dress and stood alone. Her graceful figure stood there with a sweet smile and beautiful eyes, and she emitted a charm that could captivate all living beings. Swoosh! She attacked. A powerful sword intent flashed out like purple chi from the east, and it carried a vast aura that was as powerful as the clouds. In the blink of an eye, the 3 cultivators who were the first to flee were killed on the spot. Their bodies were torn into pieces, and blood dyed the steps red. Not a single one of them could block Ahu's sword. The nearby spectators gulped with difficulty. Only then did they realize that this devastatingly beautiful beauty was actually on Lin Sun's side. Moreover, her battle prowess was terrifyingly powerful. Chapter 1818. Ahu's appearance was like a horizontal barrier, blocking the mountain road. Her beauty was breathtaking, but her combat power was also so strong that no one dared to underestimate her. After all, how could an ordinary person have the power to kill 3 descendants of great forces with one sword? You can't escape, Oh said. She stood alone, and wisps of purple great way emerged in her palm, turning into a frightening sword intent. This made the strong people on the top of Yulong Mountain extremely shocked and angry. Their retreat was also blocked, and they had no way to retreat. Fight! Gu Sangshin roared with a livid face. He could see that Lin Sun and that woman were obviously going to kill them this time. Swish, Gu Sangshin's body seemed to be burning, releasing his potential to the extreme. He took out a black sword covered with ferocious blood-red Taoist patterns and chopped at Lin Sun. Before the sword light arrived, the sharp sword intent that tore through the void was already so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes and their souls trembled. Gu Sangshin was stronger than Yin Chunjun, and he was a peerless swordsman in the top 50 of Starry Sky Great Saints. At this moment, he attacked desperately and even used his secret treasure, which could be imagined how powerful it was. Humph! Lin Sun raised his hand and lashed out with his whip. The purple thunder whip was glittering with crystal-clear thunder and lightning arcs, which made the sword shake violently. The collision between the sword chi and the whip shadow made the void explode. Chop! At the same time, Lin Sun chopped out with his sword. Suddenly, like the beginning of chaos, the sword of Avicii came to the world like hell, and the whole void was imprisoned in it. Indistinctly, endless sword chi emerged from the hell, splitting yin and yang, raging the universe. The sword of Avicii itself was a primordial ancient treasure, the sword of Mingi's sword emperor in primitive times. Its power was not inferior to any other secret treasure at all. Whoosh! In the void, the surging black sword chi rushed to Gu Sangshin, and the sword intent was so terrible that even Gu Sangshin felt cold. Dong! Kuan Julin and some other great saints joined hands to stop Lin Sun's attack. Kuan Julin took out an antique bronze bell, which suddenly enlarged and shrouded Lin Sun. The bell emitted the fluctuation of the Great Way, containing the power of life and death. Various trump cards flashed over from other directions as well. They were either rare ancient treasures or forbidden secret arts and divine abilities. In short, they were all risking their lives. Rumble, a collision that shook the heavens and the earth resounded. The battlefield was in chaos. Terrifying sword chi, blade chi, treasure chi, and blade chi raged as they swept out, causing the sun and moon to go dim and the sky to lose color. The souls of all the cultivators that were spectating the battle in the distance trembled. Their vision was covered in a vast expanse of white, and they were unable to see anything, because the aura of destruction created by the collision this time was truly too shocking. Thud, thud, thud. In the smoke and dust, Lin Sun took a few steps back. Every time he took a step, the void collapsed in disorder, which made him look a little embarrassed. This was the first time he had been pushed back since the start of the battle. Although this blow didn't cause any substantial harm to Lin, it refreshed the spirits of the others present. Did this mean that Lin Sun was not invincible? That's more like it. Otherwise, all of you would probably feel disgruntled when you die. Lin Sun suddenly took a deep breath, and then his aura suddenly became much stronger. Earlier, he was like a cauldron in the sky, and he seemed to possess the might to suppress the past and present. At this moment, he'd changed completely. His body was boundlessly deep like an abyss, and he seemed as if he intended to devour the entire world. He revealed a boundlessly overbearing, imposing aura. Boundless devouring scripture. After swallowing the peach of immortality, he'd obtained an epiphany that he'd endured for 10 years of bitter cultivation, and this peerless inheritance of the Lord of Skyfall had been comprehended and grasped by Lin Sun a step further. Now that he'd executed it with a completely new cultivation, its might couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. Kill, quickly attack together. Gu Songxin and the others were shocked, and they practically attacked with all their might. They'd completely disregarded everything. All of you don't have a chance. Lin Sun's eyes were indifferent, and his voice was completely emotionless. After that, he moved. He was like a moving abyss that covered the sky, and everywhere he passed, space, sunlight, and dust fell into obliteration and destruction. He punched out. Clang! The antique bronze bell above Kuan Julin's head rang, spurting out a waterfall-like divine rainbow to block Lin Sun's punch. This bell also had a long history. With his treasure, Kuan Julin once blocked all the attacks of 19 peers. His clothes were not broken, and his defense was incomparably strong. But at this time, this peerless treasure buzzed and trembled under Lin Sun's punch. The waterfall-like divine rainbow was smashed into the bell, and a dent was left on it. Clang! The bronze bell rumbled, and cracks appeared on its surface. The treasure was connected with qi. When the bell was damaged, Kuan Julin spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated rapidly. But this was just the beginning. Then, Lin Sun's punch blasted away the trump cards of the peerless figures one after another. The light rain was annihilated and devoured by Lin Sun's punch. Finally, Lin Sun's punch hit Gu Songxin's sword. Crack! When the fist and the sword collided, the ancient sword covered with ferocious blood-colored Taoist patterns was suddenly bent, and then flew out of Gu Songxin's hand with a buzz. Suffering from this impact, Gu Songxin was also shaken and flew out. In just a few breaths, the situation was reversed by Lin Sun again. His unparalleled power shocked the audience once again. Watching this scene, all the overmatches were shocked to the point that their minds went blank. Again, a peerless great sage roared, and 6 divine rainbows rushed out of his body, which evolved into 6 amazing visions. Lin Sun waved his fist and rushed up. Boom! The man was like an abyss, and the punch was like an abyss. The 6 visions on the man's body could also be regarded as a strange martial art, but at this time, they were easily torn apart and exploded. The man's body was pierced by Lin Sun's punch. Like an ant being crushed by a giant elephant, his flesh and blood were crushed and annihilated. Then, Gu Songxin, Kuan Julin, and others rushed over one after another. There was no way back for them except to fight desperately. Lin Sun was neither happy nor sad. He didn't even use his treasure. He waved his fist and used the infinite devouring scripture to punch out. The fist intent was like an abyss, devouring the sky and earth. The infinite devouring scripture, a supreme martial art that once shocked the boundless starry sky and conquered many emperors, showed unimaginable power at this moment. Bang, bang, bang. All obstructions and attacks were destroyed, crushed, and devoured, and it caused a scene that seemed like it could obliterate the heavens and the earth. Some people coughed up blood and were seriously injured. Some people were directly killed, their bodies and souls destroyed. Even Gu Songxin, Kuan Julin, and others were injured. Under the stimulation of death, they were all bloodshot and completely crazy. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. Lin Sun's aura became more and more terrifying. In the end, his whole body was shrouded in a dark abyss, like an ancient demon god. Finally, Kuan Julin couldn't bear it anymore. After fighting Lin Sun many times, his body cracked and his flesh burst. Blood poured out like a waterfall, making him look hideous and terrible. He screamed and rushed towards a mountain road. Puff! Aho made a move. He had been accumulating strength for a long time and cut off a bloody head. Kuan Julin was seriously injured and dying. After swallowing the peach, Ahu's combat power had become completely different. It would be strange if Kuan Julin didn't die. The spectators were all trembling. Kuan Julin's headless body was lying on the bluestone steps, with blood flowing down like a river, which made the spectators' hair stand on end. Looking at the battlefield, there were only a dozen people who besieged Lin Sun at this time, and each of them was injured like a trapped beast. The spectators couldn't help but have a thought appear in their minds. Guzong Xin and the others are finished. No accident happened. In the following time, Some people tried to escape, but they couldn't escape from Ahu's obstruction and were killed on the ancient Bluestone Mountain Road. Some people risked their lives to kill Lin Sun, but they were ruthlessly killed by Lin Sun like moths darting into the fire. Some people rushed to the misty, mysterious, forbidden area far away from the top of Yulong Mountain. But as soon as they entered, they screamed miserably, and their whole bodies were burned into ashes. Because only those with the immortal token could enter that place. Puff, puff, puff. One after another, peerless great saints were killed like rain. No matter how they used their treasures, magic skills, secret methods, and even their own trump cards, it was of no use under Lin Sun's attack. A torrential rain of blood poured down. The summit of Mount Yulong was completely shrouded in the color of blood. The flowing blood dyed the earth red and soaked it. The spectators trembled all over, and their minds went blank. They had seen ruthless people who killed people like flies, but it was the first time for them to see such a peerless, ruthless person like Lin Sun. He killed the disciples of great forces like killing chickens. If such bloody scenes were transmitted back to the starry sky ancient path, it was bound to cause an endless uproar, because it was very rare for something so horrifying to happen on the ancient path. After all, almost all of these dead people came from the 6 Tao courts and the 10 war clans. In the past, who dared to disrespect them? Who dared to slaughter them mercilessly like Lin Sun? Lin Sun, I'll kill you. Only Gu Zongxin was left in the field. He suddenly inserted the sword in his hand into his chest like a madman. The black ancient sword covered with bloody and ferocious Taoist patterns buzzed, and Gu Zongxin's qi, blood and strength poured into the sword like a river. His hair suddenly became pale and withered, and his skin cracked and aged, as if he had lost all his spirit at once. And the breath of the black ancient sword suddenly rose and became stronger and stronger. Sacrificial sword. The spectators in the distance all changed their expressions. This was a forbidden secret method, which was equivalent to sacrificing one's life to awaken the silent power in the treasure. Sacrificial sword. Lin Sun's black eyes showed a trace of trance, and he thought of Yin Qingbai, who also desperately fought like this. Boom! With the roar, the black ancient sword, which had absorbed all the strength of Gu Zongxin, seemed to be completely awakened at this moment. An earth-shaking breath instantly fell on the top of Yulong Mountain.